Hello Patriots! I'm at Restored Republic via a GCR update compiled by Judy Byington. Global quantum financial system activated. Worldwide freedom from debt. 10 days of worldwide communication darkness imminent, while global military alliance makes mass arrests. Let us pray.
I didn't feel good enough, but I was good enough for God. When I was at my lowest point, I asked God how He felt about me. Am I doing the right thing? Am I a failure? I just remember His answer. You're going to be okay. I have a plan for you. Don't worry. It'll work out. That offered me so much clarity, so much peace, because I realized that I was looking in all the wrong places for appreciation and for fulfillment, when in reality, I should have just been looking to Him. No one has the debt of understanding. No one has the debt of love, and no one wants your success more than does God.
Judy note, on Thursday, 13 Aug. 2026, President Trump introduced the quantum financial system to the world. I am pleased to share this important message regarding the future of our financial freedom and economic sovereignty. The world is entering a new era of financial innovation. One such advancement is the quantum financial system, QFS, which is more secure, transparent, and equitable for everyone. SMALF 7/status/2 quintillion 88 quadrillion 221 trillion 235 billion 880 million 898,842 equals 20 official statement by President Donald J. Trump regarding the quantum financial system, QFS. The White House, Washington, D.C., 20,500 Thursday. 13 Aug. 2026, to the citizens of the United States, I am pleased to share this important message regarding the future of our financial freedom and economic sovereignty. The world is entering a new era of financial innovation. Emerging technologies are creating opportunities to build systems that are more secure, transparent, and equitable for everyone. One such advancement is the quantum financial system, QFS. I encourage every American to take the time to learn about the benefits of the QFS, including enhanced security for your assets and transactions, real-time transparency and accountability, protection against fraud, corruption, and financial manipulation, and a solid foundation for long-term prosperity and freedom. I urge all citizens to prepare for the transition to the quantum financial system, QFS, and to make the switch as soon as the system becomes available to you. By working together, we can build a stronger, fairer, and more prosperous financial future for generations to come. The time for change has arrived. The future belongs to us, and together, we will make that future brighter than ever before. Sincerely, Donald J. Trump, 45th President of the United States of America. What brought all this on? On Wed 12 Aug. 2026, the day prior to Trump's statement about the QFS, and in order for the financial transition to take place, Trump signed an executive order declaring a nationwide lockdown across the United States, likely to begin Sun or Moon 17 Aug. 2026. The president cited that the reason for the lockdown was a grave and escalating national security threat was being presented. What he didn't say was the actual reason for the security threat was that the QFS activation officially took U.S. taxpayer dollars away from control of the Illuminati Satan-worshipping deep state cabal that they had had since 1913, and gave the monies back for direct use of the people. The cabal didn't like that and was doing everything they could to see it didn't happen. Trump's executive order mandated strict stay-at-home orders for all citizens, suspended non-essential travel, and mobilized federal resources to enforce the measures. During that time, Trump's global military alliance was making mass arrests of the cabal. Live. Trump to America. Lockdown now. Immediate order sends shockwaves across nation as of Friday. 14 Aug. 2026, the entire world was under martial law. Over 80,000 military operations units were deployed in financial political capitals. The transition to worldwide martial law is now 100% complete. The military had complete oversight of critical infrastructure, and the old cabal power structure was unable to recover or communicate. The Global Military Alliance has initiated full seizure of the mainstream media broadcasting networks and corporate news headquarters in order to implement emergency truth transmissions according to Tier 4B ISO 20022. 14 AUG. 2026. ITBGINS. Military Tribunals, Secret Operations, and the Silent War to Save the Republic. The Military Commissions Act is now active. 14 AUG. 2026. Explosive Report. 500,000 SEALED indictments. The justice avalanche waiting to fall. The beginning of the quantum financial system. They laugh now. They won't later, said Dr. Charlie Ward, who in 2016 oversaw President Trump's order to take 650 plane loads of gold from beneath the Vatican and returned it to its rightful owner, the U.S. Treasury. It marked the beginning of the quantum financial system and transfer of the people's monies from the Satan-worshipping deep state cabal back to use of the peoples of the world. 3 years ago, I told you this was coming. Now it's here. When we started on our walks in southern Spain as the sun came up, I told you the deep state cabal were going to shut down the world's economy for a global financial reset to their digital fiat monies. That's where we are right now. For those just waking up, it's all happening. This isn't an accident. This is a plan. They're destroying the world's economy. Fuel prices up. Food supplies stopped. Big business boosted, small business destroyed. Only this time the world's economy won't be saved by the deep state cabal's fiat monies that have been used to control the people since the Civil War. Trump and his global military alliance, along with the BRICS nations, were in the final stages of installing gold asset-backed currencies in 209 nations that traded at a one with each other. Back on Mon. 20 July 2026 at 02:00 UTC, the SWIFT protocol clearance keys were permanently overridden. The privately owned central banking cartel was legally and physically severed from individual wealth management, and the transition to the gold asset-backed ISO 20022 quantum financial system, QFS, standard entered its non-reversible execution phase according to an internal U.S. Treasury memo on that date. The transition begins. Your bank account won't disappear. Your money won't vanish. But the system that enslaved you will be dead. The Federal Reserve, finished. The IRS, finished. The old financial order, finished. Quantum financial system, QFS, is the only way out. There were a lot of secret military operations taking place across the world in order for the QFS to be put in place. Massive military sweeps across elite private islands and subterranean facility networks has confirmed complete neutralization of rogue operations and underground human logistics nodes. Interpol and Global Military Command have executed simultaneous raids on Central Intelligence black site archives, recovering decades of hidden financial records, blackmail vaults, and direct order logs. International shipping hubs and port authorities have been placed under strict military quarantine to prevent high-profile elites from escaping via private maritime fleets and diplomatic aircraft. Over 80,000 military police and special operations units have been deployed across major financial and political capitals to secure critical infrastructure during the ongoing global transition. On Mon. 10 AUG. There was a full deactivation of global satellite communication backbones used by corporate media and deep state command cells. Allied command structures have confirmed that the asset recovery and trials infrastructure was operating at full capacity. Compromised executive boards and corrupt political figures were being transferred directly to secure facilities. Pharma executives and FDA elites face mass tribunals under martial law for crimes against humanity. Big Pharma death industry collapses overnight as healed child survivors testify live. There has been a full deactivation of global satellite communication backbones used by the corporate media and deep state command cells. Space Force defense units have neutralized foreign satellite infrastructure used by elite cabal networks for encrypted command and control operations. Covert deep state subterranean facilities and encrypted data servers have been compromised and secured by joint intel units. These sites, previously used to run mass surveillance and manipulate global narratives, are being dismantled piece by piece to cut off all remaining control channels. Top-tier architects of the old corporate media matrix were being removed from key positions as global broadcast networks face emergency seizures. Declassified communicator logs reveal decades of coordinated censorship and psychological operations directed at suppressing alternative technologies and free energy innovations. The rollout of advanced Tesla-based power grids is accelerating behind the scenes, designed to render obsolete the centralized, high-cost utility monopolies. Localized resonance harvesters are replacing the fragile, debt-ridden grid infrastructure to ensure permanent energy independence for all sovereign regions. Secure satellite hubs were now fully active, replacing compromised fiber optic backbones with quantum-encrypted data streams. This new independent network will host the upcoming unfiltered archives, exposing every hidden contract, illicit patent suppression, and covert operation run by the cabal. The final phases of the systemic restructuring were unfolding. The old paradigm was gone. The takedown of the centralized information and energy monopoly is complete. The new freedom infrastructure is live. Martial law locks down remaining globalist sabotage against the rollout. Emergency quantum broadcast networks were prepared to stream unedited evidence logs and witness testimonies across all intercepted channels worldwide. 10 Days of Darkness begin the final media takeover, success, and century of cabal crimes. When the EBS goes off over cell phones across the world, 10 countries will be running it to cover the Earth. There will be 10 days of documentaries running in 3 8-hour sessions per day. The documentaries will be shown in 22 different languages and were set to cover the elite military tribunals and their confessions of crimes.
What we thought we knew but didn't really know, and now are supposed to know but don't have a clue. Friday, August 14, 2026, Pastor Bob Joyce admits he's Elvis Presley. Friday, August 14th, White House bombshell. The Capitol restored. The White House has unveiled an epic Game of Thrones-style video showcasing Trump's vision for Washington, D.C., mechanical monuments rise, restored landmarks dominate the Capitol, and the journey ends inside the Oval Office. The message is unmistakable. The Capitol restored, order restored, the Capitol reclaimed. Washington's transformation takes center stage. Just 1 year since the Make D.C. Safe and Beautiful Task Force began, Washington, D.C. is a safe city. 6,000 arrests. Thank you, President Trump. FBI Director Kash Patel explains.
Possible timing, unknown. 20 July 2026 at 02:00 UTC, the SWIFT protocol clearance keys were permanently overridden. The privately owned central banking cartel was legally and physically severed from individual wealth management, and the transition to the gold asset-backed ISO 20022 quantum financial system, QFS, standard entered its non-reversible execution phase. 17 GMT, the quantum financial system went live. On Sun. 9 Aug. 2026, Trump unleashed the greatest wealth transfer in history, and the old fiat slave system began collapsing in real time. On Moan. 10 Aug. 2026, Trump dissolved the Federal Reserve and IRS, plus activated NESARA GESARA. Tier 4B, US, the Internet Group Protocol for the Global Currency Reset went active on SAT. 15 Aug. 2026, Trump announces complete restoration of human vitality under the restored republic. Zim redemptions accelerate new healing centers in every nation. On Sun. 16 Aug. 2026, 10 Days of Darkness prepare the final media takeover. On Twos. 1 Sep. 2026, the quantum financial system officially moves to live global sync. Redemption centers open for the general public. Major banking grids begin quiet shutdown procedures as transactions reroute through the QFS network. The Federal Reserve, IMF, and SWIFT systems will freeze cross-border operations while asset-backed settlements activate in real time. On Sun. 22 Nov. 2026, the new ISO 20022 international banking standards will go into full effect on the 63rd anniversary of the assassination of U.S. President John F. Kennedy, 22 Nov. 1963. E-Global Currency Reset. Fry. 14 Aug. 2026, it's official. Redemption centers will start processing live appointments in accordance with full GESARA protocol during the first week of September, 2026. The schedule is already being filled with authorized Tier 4B participants, according to sources within 2 U.S. Your instruments will be placed in your very own QFS, Quantum Financial System account, that only you have access to. Anyone you take with you will not have access to that account. There will be a device given to you with biometric chips built in that can only be used by you and no one else to transfer money from your QFS account to your standard accounts. You can use up to 4 accounts to tie to your QFS account. You will have the option of taking some new USDNs, U.S. Treasury notes, which are the new asset-backed currency with you up to $2,500, which will come out of your currency and bond transaction. If you are a ZIM holder, you should also receive a Q phone or a certificate to get one at your local phone center stores. The Q phone is a satellite phone and is unique and different from your current cell phone. A medical team will be on site in case some of you faint during the 30-40 minutes you are there to process your bonds and currency. When you leave, go directly home. Relax. You will be filled with anxiety and excitement over what you just have done. The amount of currency available to you from the redemption and exchange process will be more than you have ever seen in your lifetime. Let it sink in. Be careful who you talk with about it after the fact and do not break your NDA if placed under one. All of your communications will be monitored, so be smart. Think before speaking. If you break the NDA, your funds could be withheld or pulled back. You will need to set up a common law trust within 30 days. This is a specific type of trust to place any homes, autos, land, and other LLCs under for your own protection. Remember to do this within 30 days. I would use a personal attorney rather than the bank attorneys in their trust department because they could potentially put the bank into your trust agreement as a beneficiary instead of your family members or loved ones you specify in case something were to happen to you. Do not make flashy PURCHASES, which will draw attention to yourself. 2026 NESARA. Quantum Financial System Intel on Telegram. What is NESARA? National Economic Security and Reform Act. What is GESARA? Global Economic Security and Reform Act. What does NESARA GESARA offer? Abolish all federal and local taxes. Forgiveness of debts. Cancel all credit card debts, mortgage, and other banking debts. Distribution of wealth. This does not only include material wealth but humanity, dignity, and consciousness. With the ongoing worldwide military operation, generally described as fight between good and evil. Yes, good is winning. Over the years, we have witnessed the fight against child human trafficking on a global scale, which of course has achieved tremendous victory. Billions of lives and resources has been saved, restored to humanity. Under the white hats or the good guys military operation, each nation has recovered a minimum estimated of over 91 trillion worth of precious metals and over 88 trillion worth of minerals and health resources. This is the source of the ongoing NESARA's construction and wealth distribution. Each country maintains their sovereignty. You, as a person, maintain your sovereignty. Yes, you own your stuff, land, home, cars. Each country has their own sovereign physical and digital currency that is backed by precious metals, utility-backed currency with values, not as with the corrupt fiat system. Each country worships as they pleases. Each country governs itself independently. Currencies worldwide, digital, physical, are placed on a level play field that brings fairness to the world trade markets, all backed by precious metals. Society will not be entirely cashless. Rather, all currencies, physical or digital, will be backed with tangible precious metals. This is the reason why we are currently witnessing a steady collapse of the central banking system worldwide, as the decentralized financial market system revolution continues. Over $106 billion, 106 billions, are in circulation payments to all citizens. These funds are obtainable through your Q phones. The hour has ARRIVED. We all prayed for this day. As of 11 Aug. 2026, the global emergency broadcast system activation under martial law stands imminent, set to trigger a 3-day event followed by 10 days of communication darkness. During this period, 8 billion people and banks worldwide complete the global currency, reset to gold, and asset-backed currencies across 209 nations. Military units have mobilized globally for a coordinated strike against the globalist power structure in what is described as the greatest sting operation ever conducted. Every cell phone on the planet is expected to receive 7 trumpet sounds transmitted from Starlink satellites, bypassing elite-controlled media. Normal communications then cease for 10 days, while documentaries explain unfolding events. Banks close, ATMs and credit cards stop functioning. 3 weeks of food and water supplies are advised, though the military stands ready to provide necessities where needed. Continuous broadcasts will educate the public on the principles of freedom and justice. President Trump's global military alliance has prepared for years, constructing secure satellite networks and communication lines. Trump is set to deliver 7 messages announcing a new era of freedom. More than 500,000 arrests of treasonous pedophile deep state globalists proceed worldwide. These actors long controlled the global financial system, steadily eroding freedoms in service of the New World Order depopulation, Agenda 2030, while claiming the right to rule. The alliance has countered this since the Lincoln era, selecting Trump to lead the effort. His military alliance has advanced the plan since before the 2016 inauguration. Central to breaking cabal control is the global currency reset, returning taxpayer funds to the people. The new gold and asset-backed quantum financial system of 209 nations is scheduled to go live on Sunday, 23 August 2026, ushering in financial transparency and freedom from prior control. Intelligence further indicates that Obama established a shadow government of radicals through organizations including Organizing for Action and the Obama Foundation to sabotage Trump, the American people, and the Constitution. The senior executive service was weaponized, embedding loyalists nationwide alongside technology companies, mainstream media, and academia to form a deep state apparatus. Democratic Socialists of America members have pledged allegiance to the Chinese Communist Party and received preferential treatment in China, with leadership openly favoring socialist models. Trump has expanded operations targeting protest funding networks linked to Cuba, alongside the GESARA. The cabal's financial dominance and ritual abuse networks face decisive dismantling as the alliance executes the long-prepared transition. Martial law UNLEASHED. EBS alerts urgent broadcast and how redemption centers might be our only hope. Deep state arrests. California alone has witnessed up to 8,000 arrests, with over 3,000 in the Northeast U.S., particularly concentrated in the New England area. Rumors suggest that the populace might be urged to stay indoors for their safety, especially during disclosures, while the final arrests take place. However, a resilient and awakened citizenry, now more than ever, won't be silenced or confined. The Emergency Broadcast System, EBS, is on the horizon, and when it hits, it will be swift, silent, and shocking. Like a ghostly shadow, everything familiar will fade into obscurity. Just like the eerie silence of 2020, we'll be asked to remain rooted, perhaps for days, maybe weeks. The military, it seems, has a broader purpose. As the last of the so-called Satanists face arrest and are sent to Gitmo, the military is also gearing up to distribute food, especially to the elderly. This is not just about control, but also about care. There's chatter about the military potentially overseeing the nation until fresh elections are held, precisely 120 days post the GESARA announcement. The focus should shift towards electing individuals with business acumen, particularly those who can rejuvenate local businesses, and more importantly, food-growing enterprises. The bustling stock market, halted. The digital world you're so intricately linked to, gone. And trust me, when the EBS alert vibrates your cell phone, echoing the chilling announcement, you'll know it's begun. These messages, sourced from the Starlink, are there to stay. Deleting them? Forget about it. They're imprinted, lasting reminders of the changing times. Essentials first. Stock up on clean drinking water. Ensure there's enough food, not just for you, but for your pets too. Medicines, get them in advance. Remember, the digital world is on a hiatus, so medical records are inaccessible. Cash is king. In a world where digital transactions become obsolete, cash will be your savior. ATMs might be out of service, and swiping those cards at gas pumps. Dream on. Mental fortitude. When the shock hits, it's vital to keep your wits about you. Before you extend your hand to others, ensure you're mentally fortified. Some might be in a state of shock, unable to respond. In such cases, a breath of fresh air, a gentle walk might help. Your TV, phone, and internet will spring back to life, unveiling a spectacle titled Disclosures. Rumor has it might even grace the big screens. But this isn't your typical Netflix binge. It's a 24/7, 8-hour block broadcast, lasting anywhere between 3 to 10 days. The content? Oh, it's the raw, unfiltered truth of events, spanning military tribunals and even, hold your breath, public executions. Areas drenched in corruption like Los Angeles and New York might experience extended viewing periods. But when the switch is flipped back, expect a metamorphosis. A world pulsating with positive energy devoid of evil's grasp. The internet, transformed. Banking systems, revolutionized. This, dear readers, is the dawn of an era of transparency and abundance. A veritable paradise on Earth. However, as the layers peel back, revealing covert operations, prepare to be flabbergasted. The faces you recognize might just be elaborate masquerades, Hollywood-grade masks, CGI marvels, and eerily realistic body doubles. Ever watched The Truman Show? Our reality might not be far off, with the scripted drama unfolding since 2015. The global lockdown tier for 2026 at precisely 0200 UTC, Starlink initiated global lockdown of rogue comms. Blackout zones lit in red, then dropped. The emergency broadcast system entered live operational deployment. 10 days, unfiltered, uncensored, unstoppable. The world is now witnessing, in real time, the collapse of everything it once trusted, and the unveiling of what has always been hidden in plain sight. EBS Transmission 1. Project Perseus activated. The first wave of footage aired this morning, beginning with military tribunals conducted between 2020 and 2024. Names once thought untouchable now flash across tribunal boards. John Brennan, Christine Lagarde, Klaus Schwab, Hillary Clinton, Yuval Harari. Their crimes. Crimes against humanity. Their verdicts. Sealed, then delivered. What followed shook even seasoned analysts. Real-time footage from beneath the Vatican where stolen art, gold. These broadcasts are no longer speculation. They are evidence. Override. All broadcast channels seized. Every major news outlet, CNN, BBC, MSNBC, went dark at 01:57. Their satellite uplinks overridden. The Mockingbird system has been decapitated. Starlink's AI command, Prometheus, has assumed total control of global bandwidth, now rerouting signals exclusively through white hat quantum encryption relays. This ensures that no distortion, no spin, and no censorship will block the cascade of truths prepared for release. Phase 2 begins. The storm goes global. Mass arrests are now underway in Canada, France, Germany, Australia, and Japan. Alliance forces have neutralized over 9,400 deep state assets in the past 48 hours alone. Among them, bankers, scientists, AI architects, and public health officials who orchestrated the biowarfare campaigns disguised as public safety. In a newly aired segment, quantum-verified documents proved the World Economic Forum had issued scripted lockdown protocols years in advance, synced with weather manipulation systems and fiat collapse cycles. The coordination was industrial. The consequences were genocidal. GESARA Phase II. Civilian wealth transfer underway. Newly digitized, gold-backed funds are being injected directly into QFS-verified accounts. Citizens with biometric clearances are receiving notifications for redemption appointments, which include full debt nullification, revaluation, exchanges, quantum ID registration, sovereign asset inheritance packages, private banking cartels have been fully collapsed. Over $84 trillion in cabal-seized offshore assets are now being filtered into public trust funds. These disbursements are pre-coded by nation, population density, and consciousness resonance scores.
Right now. So let's talk about this national emergency real quick. Steve Bannon has said August, you feel October, but don't you think, and SG Anon said some things too that I thought, well, that could be interesting. Trump declares a national security emergency, which you've been saying for the last year and a half or long, about
Well,
since
I've been saying it for 5 years, but the timing
5, right. But the
was it
timing of
had
it
to come
now.
to a head, and then as we got past the election, 2024, then coming up in the midterms, it became obvious that we're there now, and so it's always been the case that the only way to get ourselves out of this paper bag that we're trapped in is the breakout is the military has to intervene. It has to be done from a commander-in-chief role. The only question was at which point you would pull that trigger. But we're now closing on the point of no return, and that would be the midterms. You
All
can't
right.
let the midterms go forward without it's the end of the world type of
But
scenario. Go ahead.
okay, so SG kind of said, and I kind of agree with this. It kind of makes sense to me a little bit. The if he does it in August or September, that gives the states time to comply and go along with this. And if not, obviously, if he does it in October, that's not giving them much time to do anything. He's
Hold
kind
on.
of stringing.
You've already okay.
Okay,
I
so
just had a major conversation with somebody in a very influential location on this, and had to read them the riot act. Um, you know, somebody I look up to a lot. They're a genius. They do important stuff. But excuse me, I just had to kick him in the ass hard with the pointy boot.
so
Wake
kick me in the
the
ass.
fuck up, okay? If you run a perfect election in November right now,
Oh, got you. The primaries.
you've already got candidates all through the electoral system that are on the ballot who got there through election fraud, in part because it's like 10 different ways, 20 different ways. But the key thing is you have voters on the voter rolls that have never been cleaned up. And the states can claim that they're cleaned up, but they're not. The reports coming out about the fraudulent voters in New York with Mandami are absolutely stunning, absolutely over the top, unimaginable how many fraudulent votes in that situation. It's going to be addressed. Take it to the bank. But the deal is that if you proceed, let's say you go ahead and go with an election November 3rd, and you have perfect, not one fraudulent vote, not one duplicate vote, not one vote by a person who's on, not a U.S. citizen, or multiple votes, or any of the mischief that goes on, not one electronic mischief, not one paper ballot mischief, nothing. If you ran a perfect election at this point, November 3rd, with the ballots that have already shaped up, plus the last handful of primaries that are still in play, you would be locking in people who are there through election fraud. Now you still have to unravel that. We've already shown that the courts are not capable of going in and unwinding fraudulent elections. We've already shown that the legislatures, the governors, the secretaries of state, the attorney generals won't bring a case that's a case on the stuff. They claim that people don't have standing. All sorts of bizarre things. They've done nothing to throttle or address the money that's laundered into campaigns from foreign sources. This is so huge. In it's beyond most people's comprehension, the amount of money that's coming predominantly from China, some of it through Eastern European and European operations, into campaigns here in the US through multiple directions. It's all fraudulent money, and the campaigns are taking it. When you address them on it, maybe they pay it back after the election. At the end of the day, none of that has been addressed in any significant way. So, can you have, at this moment in time, right now, can you have a legitimate election November 3rd? No, there's already too much fraud dialed in. Anyway, what I believe is going to happen is that the president is going to have some type of a finding concerning the situation on the elections. It's going to be as a national security um, uh, posting or address, whatever, that advises him in an official capacity. The elections have already been compromised, and that it's going to be impossible to unwind everything by November 3rd. And you have to remember, you might say, I had part of this was part of the reason for the conversation I had a little bit ago. The person was saying, well, but can't we do like the ones that are okay because we don't think they're all bad, and then the ones that we think are kind of bad, and we pause those, but we go on with the election overall? No, you can't, because first of all, you haven't done thorough enough investigations to know all the details to even legitimately pause certain elections. Others we have great information on. So let's say that we pause a bunch of elections in California and we narrow it down to certain people on the ballot, but not other people. And we do that piecemeal across the country. You know what that's a formula for, Nino? That's a formula for civil war. That's a formula for shutting down some states and not other states. It's
Jeez.
also a formula for certain states to say that we're going to go ahead and run the election for our state anyway and try to force people into office, even though they're fraudulent, including into federal office. Well, that throws the balance off for other people that are already there. You
Jeez.
can't, balances are out of whack. The scripture says, I, the Lord God, hate. It's a pretty strong word if you think it's God saying it. Hate um, uh, unjust weights and balances. And a fraudulent election is an unjust weight and balance because it doesn't give civil rights of an honest vote to certain people, and it gives extra votes to other people. That's an unjust weight and measure. Throws the balances off. The country goes off the rails with improper balances. So the reality is, the only answer, when I had Peter Tickton on the stage with me at the Fraud Fighter Summit, and I had several other people that I said the same thing with. We talked about it, Professor Clemens and others. But Peter Tickton initially said, well, I mean, there could possibly, maybe. And I says, but wait a second, what about the primaries? He said, well, you can't fix those. There's no way to go back and unravel that. I says,
Point
listen, can you
taken.
have an
Point
honest election
taken.
in November?
Right.
He
Point
said,
taken.
no, there's no path forward at this point in time. The only way to do this, he said, well, there's going to have to be some kind of a thing. I said, pause, but I says, it's really a full stop. And he agreed, yes, a full stop.
Let me ask you this. The Democrats have to be anticipating this national security emergency. I mean, the SAVE Act isn't passing. They got to know this is Trump's next move. They know this is coming.
Let me just say this. Yeah, absolutely, Nino. They know it. Newsweek,
So why
after
are their donors still dumping money into their campaigns?
Well, hold on a second. They're now in a. Let me just finish the first question. After I had Peter Tickton on the stage the other day at the Fraud Fighter Summit, then Newsweek did a hit piece on him, as though he was off his rocker and the president can't do this, he can't declare a national emergency, whatever. You have to go read the article and weigh it out yourself. It's been a while since I read it, but at the end of the day, they attacked the idea that president could pause the elections or stop them, and it was based on this public thing because he hasn't done anything else that was quite that public, saying anything like this until he did it at the Fraud Fighter Summit. The reason that they would still fund these things is because they still believe within the Democratic Party and the rhinos. It's not a one-sided thing. This is not just Democrat versus Republican. This is con artists, electoral thieves, shysters in both parties. And so they benefit by getting into office, and they think, many of them are already in office, they think that they can power through this. they're looking at what Trump would do as something that would be able to be fought back from a legislative level or a judicial level. A judge puts a freeze on Trump's actions. Already, a couple of Western states have filed or are about to file things seeking an injunction against President Trump interfering in their elections at the state level as a state's right. What they're failing to dial into any of these equations, and most of the listeners here have to rethink where they're at.
President Trump, temporary martial law, nation to go in lockdown with stay-at-home orders, non-essential travel to be suspended, likely by Sunday or Monday, 16-17 August 2026. Judy note, President Trump on Wednesday, August 12, 2026, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. The nation will be going into lockdown. Immediate orders send shockwaves across nation. In a historic address from the White House on Wednesday, President Donald Trump has declared an immediate nationwide lockdown across the entire United States, citing a grave and escalating national security threat. The sweeping executive order, effective immediately, mandates strict stay-at-home orders for all citizens, suspends non-essential travel, and mobilizes federal resources to enforce the measures. This unprecedented decision follows emergency consultations with the Joint Chiefs of Staff and national security advisors aiming to contain the crisis and protect the American public. The federal government will coordinate with state authorities to implement the lockdown as the nation grapples with the bombshell announcement from the president. Saturday, August 8th, massive cyber offensives and data breaches neutralizing central banking and federal communications infrastructure. By Sunday, August 9, 2026, the U.S. military was stationed in 360 cities, anticipating immediate Supreme Court directives on emergency constitutional petitions, which threaten to dissolve compromised federal jurisdictions. The U.S. military and D.C. police were preparing comprehensive security lockdowns across Washington, D.C. The Global Military Alliance accelerating mass arrests and active tribunals targeting over 500,000 deep state cabal, political and global elites. Intelligence agencies, federal enforcement bodies, and associated political leadership implicated in continuing covert operations, deep state collusion, and elite trafficking networks. Massive inflows of unvetted border crossings, weaponized to supply high-level networks serving high-ranking officials and state actors as per verified military intelligence. Thursday, August 13, 2026, temporary martial law alert. Expect a global blackout and EBS activation. Global EBS activation under martial law for a 3-day event, 10 days of communication darkness, while 8 billion people and all banks across the globe complete a global currency reset to gold asset-backed currencies. Quantum Systems, Project. During this period, 8 billion people and banks worldwide complete the global currency reset to gold and asset-backed currencies across 209 nations. Military units have mobilized globally for a coordinated strike against the globalists, power structure, in what is described as the greatest sting operation ever conducted. Every cell phone on the planet is expected to receive 7 trumpet sounds transmitted from Starlink satellites, bypassing elite-controlled media. Normal communications then cease for 10 days while documentaries explain unfolding events. Banks close, ATMs and credit cards stop functioning. 3 weeks of food and water supplies are advised. Though the military stands ready to provide necessities where needed, continuous broadcasts will educate the public on the principles of freedom and justice. President Trump's global military alliance has prepared for years, constructing secure satellite networks and communication lines. Trump is set to deliver 7 messages announcing a new era of freedom. More than 500,000 arrests of treasonous pedophile deep state globalists proceed worldwide. These actors long controlled the global financial system, steadily eroding freedoms in service of the New World Order depopulation Agenda 2030 while claiming their right to rule. The alliance has countered this since the Lincoln era, selecting Trump to lead the effort. His military alliance has advanced the plan since before the 2016 inauguration. Central to breaking cabal control is the global currency reset, returning taxpayer funds to the people. The new gold asset-backed quantum financial system of 209 nations is scheduled to go live on Sunday, August 23, 2026, ushering in financial transparency and freedom from prior control. Intelligence further indicates that Obama established a shadow government of radicals through organizations including Organizing for Action and the Obama Foundation to sabotage Trump, the American people, and the Constitution. The senior executive service was weaponized, embedding loyalists nationwide alongside technology companies, mainstream media, and academia to form a deep state apparatus. Democratic Socialists of America members have pledged allegiance to the Chinese Communist Party and received preferential treatment in China, with leadership openly favoring socialist models. Trump has expanded operations targeting protest funding networks linked to Cuba, while mass arrests involving high-level figures continue. The restored republic under original constitutional principles advances alongside the GCR. The cabal's financial dominance and ritual abuse networks face decisive dismantling as the alliance executes the long-prepared transition.
On Monday, the 10th of August 2026, Trump dissolved the Federal Reserve and IRS, plus activated NESARA GESARA. Tier 4 BUS, the Internet Group Protocol for the Global Currency Reset, went active. On Thursday, the 13th of August 2026, Fox News, Trump signed NESARA GESARA Reset Bill. On Saturday, the 15th of August 2026, Trump announces complete restoration of human vitality under the restored republic. On Sunday, the 16th of August 2026, 10 Days of Darkness prepare the final media takeover. On Tuesday, the 1st of September 2026, the quantum financial system officially moves to Live Global Sync. Redemption centers open for the general public. Major banking grids begin quiet shutdown procedures as transactions reroute through the QFS network. The Federal Reserve, IMF, and SWIFT systems will freeze cross-border operations while asset-backed settlements activate in real time. On Sunday, the 22nd of November 2026, the new ISO 2002
Hey guys, it's Friday. It's the 14th of August, and this is our penultimate day in Singapore. It's been a fabulous time here. But there's so much going on, and there's so much going on that's not being talked about. I'm going to start with talking about BRICS and BRICS Pay. As of today, over 40 countries are currently using BRICS Pay to pay one another, circumnavigating using the dollar, the US dollar. But what they're not doing is they're not making this the only choice. They're not boycotting the dollar. It's being done very, very carefully. And BRICS Pay, with 40 countries using it, settling business, those 40 countries have settled 67% of their trades with BRICS Pay. That means only 33% have been settled with US dollars, where it used to be 100%. The US is in complete panic. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. Everything is slipping through their hands, and we're watching. They can't even pass the Clarity Act, where everybody else has. Everybody else is ahead of the game. Most Americans, and I say this carefully because 80% of Americans don't even have passports. They haven't traveled. I've talked to some Americans yesterday, and Americans have this thought that they're the world leaders. They're the best in the world. They're the number one because they've been told it. They've been told it by everybody. But I met a lovely, lovely American family from California yesterday. They were in Singapore. Today they're in Kuala Lumpur. And then they go on to Shanghai. They're in complete and utter shock at how far ahead Singapore is than America. And I said, you wait till you get to Shanghai. You have a look at Kuala Lumpur. These are incredible cities that if you actually gave somebody a pen, 80% of Americans, if you gave them a pen, they couldn't show you where Singapore is on the world map. And what is even more funny is if you told them to put a pen on a map and show you where Iraq or Iran were, not a clue, let alone Ukraine. And yet they've allowed this to go ahead, these wars to go ahead with countries. They don't even know where they are. They don't even know why you're doing it. You just fall into the mode of being doing as you're told. Now, in your defense, in Singapore, there's still people here wearing masks. There's a lot of people here from China. They're so addicted to masks because they've been told for years, you have to wear them, you have to wear them. It's brainwashing. But as I said the other day with the scripture that I had, there's no point planting seeds on rocky ground. Because if you talk to these people, you might as well talk to a wall. They look at you completely dumbfounded. They don't know what you're talking about. And that explains why 80% of the people on this earth are NPCs. They're non-playing characters. They're not a part of it. And I thank God for the 20%, 15 to 20% that are playing their part. There's a lot of very, very good people out there. But don't worry about those that we've left behind because there's only so much you can do. This is a very special time. Things are moving forward. Going back to the BRICS currency, it's backed by gold. 40% of it is backed by gold. 60% is backed by a basket of currencies from the other countries. It's stable. They can't just print like they've done for years. We're moving forward to a good place. There's a lot of stuff out there to distract you, to ruffle your feathers, to get you to wake up, but we'll get through it. Drew, good morning.
Good morning, Charlie. Good morning, everyone. My first story that's not going ahead is the SEC has unexpectedly cancelled today's major meeting on the new cryptocurrency regulations, citing an unforeseen scheduling issue. The postponement comes as the Clarity Act is also delayed in Congress, leaving the crypto industry waiting once again for greater regulatory certainty.
Well, this is all part of what I just said earlier. The rest of the world's ahead of the game. And the longer they take, the more people join BRICS because they're using a digital currency that's backed by something. And this, what it will do is level out the playing field. And the beautiful thing about it is within BRICS, there are at least 5, maybe 10 independent settlement options. Brazil's always had its own internal settlement system. China has always had it. Russia's always had it. And they all happen to work together. And that is what's unnerving America. And this is why they don't know what to do with the Clarity Act and don't know what to do with the SEC. The SEC has no clout at all. It only affects people in America. And if you're not very quick, then you are going to get left so far behind. It's unbelievable. But the rest of the world, they're not waiting for you anymore because they don't see you as a world leader. They see you as an equal. An equal that's fast asleep at the moment at the wheel. They'll do what they can to wake you up, but don't panic. The rest of the world is so far ahead of the game. You've got some catching up to do, but it's a good place to be.
Right now, folks, right now, America stands at the edge of a moment that if this scenario ever became reality, which it's going to, okay, we're all anticipating this, could shake the republic to its foundation. I think we all know where we're heading. Imagine the announcement coming without warning. Now, you're getting the warning from me. You've gotten it on ninoscorner.tv. You all know, my audience knows, we've been anticipating this for the last year and a half. Juan O'Savin has come on and said it many, many times. President Donald Trump stood before the cameras, or he steps before the cameras and declares a national security emergency just weeks before the midterm elections. Now, I think he should do it to give the states a little time to prepare, but who knows how he's going to play this card. I'm not sure. Immediately, the country erupts. Several states announced they will not comply. Now, you better expect this. Governors challenge Washington. Attorney generals race to the federal court. Political leaders accuse the White House of crossing a constitutional red line. Can you imagine that? Oh, you need voter ID? If we don't need voter ID to vote, what do we need them for cars or to check into the airports, to get on a plane? Then I refuse to give them my ID for that as well. And within minutes, the television networks light up with some explosive accusations. Dictator, coup, power grab. They claim Trump is trying to interfere with the elections. They claim he's preparing to refuse to relinquish power. They tell America that democracy itself is under attack. You better believe this is what's coming. But in this scenario, something much darker begins unfolding beneath the political battle. Because while Washington fights in courtrooms and politicians fight in front of cameras, America's streets begin heating up. Protests explode across major cities. Federal buildings are surrounded. National Guard units are placed on standby. Law enforcement receives warnings about potential attacks. And intelligence officials begin investigating the nightmare possibility that dormant extremist cells or individual radicals waiting for the right moment could exploit the chaos. Then comes the most dangerous question of all. Who is actually in control? Because if Trump believes he's confronting a genuine national security threat, while his opponents believe Trump himself has become the threat, America suddenly has two completely different versions of reality colliding at exactly the wrong moment. And folks, they cannot coexist. They cannot coexist. Meanwhile, the threats surrounding President intensify. Assassination plots and security scares begin appearing with alarming frequency as Trump approaches the emergency declaration. Secret Service protection tightens. Movements become less predictable. Security parameters are expanding. Every rooftop matters. Every suspicious vehicle matters. Every unexplained breach matters, because history tells us that periods of extreme political instability can create opportunities for unstable individuals, extremists, and foreign adversaries. I don't know, like Iran. And here's where the story reaches its breaking point, folks. What happens if Trump declares this emergency and have the country refuse to recognize his authority? What happens when governors tell Washington no, actually hell no? What happens when federal authority collide with state authority? What happens when millions of Americans are convinced an election is being stolen while millions of others are convinced the president is attempting to prevent one? And what happens if violence erupts right in the middle of it? At that point, America isn't simply watching another political controversy, folks. America is staring directly into a constitutional and national security crisis. The midterms become more than just an election. They become the battlefield over who controls the next chapter of this country for decades and decades to come. The establishment will say Trump crossed the line. Trump supporters will say the establishment finally revealed itself. The media will scream authoritarianism. The White House will scream national security. The courts will be dragged into the center of the storm. And Americans will be forced to ask one terrifying question, folks. Is the emergency being declared because chaos is coming? Or does declaring the emergency become the spark that creates the chaos? Because once that announcement is made, and I believe it's going to be made probably fairly soon, there may be no way out, and there may be no way to put the genie back in the bottle once this happens. This is the scenario we're breaking down this morning. And if a fraction of it became reality, the battle wouldn't simply be over Donald Trump. It would be over the limits of presidential power, the authority of the states, the future of American elections, and ultimately who controls the United States when the system itself is pushed to the breaking point. Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up because we're about to get into it. And by the way, folks, if you don't think things will get crazy or challenged if Trump declares this national emergency, listen to this, for example. Trump's mail-in voting restrictions blocked nationwide by a federal judge. So they're already playing the game. A federal judge on Tuesday expanded an early block on part of President Trump's executive order seeking to tighten rules for mail-in voting ahead of November's elections. Why it matters? The ruling freezes a key piece of Trump's attempted overhaul of mail-in voting for all U.S. states. A previous ruling in a separate case had limited a block for the 23 Democratic states that sued over the president's order. Now imagine a national security emergency, imagine executive orders. You can imagine the mayhem that's coming. And also the threats on Trump's life. I mean, folks, he's having to take decoy planes.
We finally got rid of Keir Starmer. And that is very important because this UK Prime Minister was blocking the change in control of the financial system because he was a front for a fake King Charles, and his removal is going to be a very good thing. But the battle is not yet over. They're going to try to replace him with a cutout, another person for the same clique. But what we really want is to replace the fake King Charles with the real King William, and then the idea is to have have a general election, and we're assuming the British people will select Nigel Farage as Prime Minister. At that point, we need to call for a new Bretton Woods conference to completely revamp the world financial system. Because right now, there could be no doubt whatsoever that it is controlled by criminals, especially now the high-tech companies. Let's think about it for a minute. They were censoring the Russian war, the Russian-Ukrainian war. They completely censored the fact that this was a joint Russian-Ukrainian Chabad genocide of the Ukrainian people. It was not a war. It was a genocide disguised as a war. And now we're hearing about 2.4 million Ukrainian men have been slaughtered, their women enslaved, and the country was turned into a slave market. It was a center for drugs, for weapons selling. They were taking all these military donations from the West and selling them for a profit. It was the absolute worst thing. And now it's looking like Poland and Hungary are going to declare war on Ukraine because they have become openly and brazenly Nazi and genocidal. However, it probably will not be necessary because Andriy Yermak, the real power behind the Zelensky regime, is in jail now. He was a front for the Soros people. A lot of the other people and the genocide are being removed, but we still need to go after the owners of the high-tech companies. Remember, they didn't just censor Russia as well as the other high-tech companies, and we must not forget that. And then the most recent example is the Iran war and the genocide in Gaza. This one they've had more trouble covering up, but it is clear that the ownership of the tech corporations, in fact, all of the Fortune 500, needs to be removed from the Rockefeller, Rothschild, Khazarian mafia and returned to the people it was stolen from. But that is going to happen. And the other thing, at this point, I'd like to say something about Freemasons. Freemasons, I'm not a Freemason, by the way, but I've been contacted by them. And Freemasons are like a double-edged sword. What happens is you have like a king or a ruler, and he sort of scouts the most influential people in society to create an informal control network. Now, that can be used for evil or it can be used for other purposes, but clearly it's still at work. Each time they get a Freemason handshake, they are subsequently removed from power, which is why it's interesting that Donald Trump refused to shake his hand when he went to the G7 last week. Now let's talk about Donald Trump. It is clear from what he's doing and saying that this is not the same Trump who started the Iran war. The face is different, and more important, what his words and actions are different. He is calling Benjamin Netanyahu a con man and insulting him in other ways. He's saying similar stuff about Zelensky. More importantly, what's happening now is we're actually seeing the birth of a U.S.-Iranian military alliance. And this means the end of Israel. Israel is finished. And so he says that the Israelis who don't want to integrate with the region, don't want to become part of a multi-ethnic, multicultural society, will go elsewhere. I don't know where they're going to be able to go on this planet. A lot of them have set up a base in Patagonia, and they're hoping they'll find shelter in Argentina. But my view is that genocidal criminals hide somewhere and then come back another day to, we must finish this off. We must liberate the Jewish people from their satanic overlords. And that is going to happen. But hopefully, if everything goes well with the White Hats winning, we'll have a Bretton Woods conference as early as this fall, once you have regime change in the UK. And that will lead to a return of the control of the financial system to democratically elected leaders, and also a revamp of the international system. And already 160 nations and international organizations are supporting a plan for a law-based, democratic, new international system that actually represents the people of the world. Because the United Nations is privately owned by the Rockefellers. They tried to use the WHO to turn this into an absolute dictatorship, and it's not going to happen. But the battle is still not over. So, for example, we still haven't had any Epstein arrests. And now it looks like Epstein Island is still owned by the same people. So we need to go after these people, okay? We can't let them just get away with mass murdering of children. That has to stop. There's no way it can continue. This is something the U.S. military really needs to get on the case. And the U.S. military also needs to have a purge of all the traitors who sold out to Israel. Listen to this 20-year-old military, this 20-year military veteran talk about what happened to him when he posted, comments critical of the genocide in Gaza. So any military officer who is working for Israel needs to be removed from ASAP. And most of them are concentrated in the Army. There's very few in the Marines and Navy. There's quite a lot in the Air Force, but mostly in the Army. So that's where the purge has to take place in order for this to happen. The other thing people need to watch out for is the Israelis have systematically honey-trapped a lot of influential people. Before we get to the Israeli example, Japanese military intelligence told me that most of the students at Japanese military colleges ended up marrying Chinese honey traps. They didn't know about it, but they did. I mean, they pretended to be Japanese, and this is what happened. And since Israel controls most of the dating apps, it's a good bet that they've placed the honey traps in all sorts of key locations. Watch this clip about how they control the dating apps. It's been previously announced you're going to show up and offers herself to you. You're supposed to chase them. So if they act unnaturally or if they're definitely out of your league, and let's be realistic, what sort of woman you can actually get, and watch out, because the honey part is nice, and that's something people need to watch out for. So the purge still needs to continue, but the battle is going very well, but it's definitely not over. I've been looking at the situation in Venezuela. They had this huge earthquake, and it was sent. It was the epicenter was only 10 kilometers deep, which is suspicious. And then I looked in the news, and it looks like Venezuela said they're not going to pay $240 billion that the Khazarian mafia says it owes them. So as soon as they say, hey, we're not going to pay the $240 billion you're asking for, they get hit with an earthquake weapon. We need to take the control of these weapons away from these people. It's the weather weapons and the earthquake weapons are the things they still have that we need to do something about. And that may involve sending troops to Antarctica to take out some of these bases where the weather warfare equipment is located. But that needs to be done. Now, another issue I wish to talk about is the situation in South Africa, because I was asked by a listener last week and I didn't have an answer. I did a bit of research. It looks like South Africa is having their own version of the illegal immigrant crisis that hit Europe and the United States. They have 40% unemployment, and South Africa is relatively rich compared to other parts of Africa, and it's been flooded with Nigerians, Malawians, and there's 40% unemployment. So there's been a spontaneous reaction, and mobs are attacking the foreigners who've come into that country. So definitely, it's a very unstable situation, but it does look like the South Africans have had enough. And the thing is, migration needs to be legal and needs to be done in such a way that it benefits the society. So we want to have, for example, in Canada, we want to have nurses and engineers. What we don't want to have is military-age young males who don't even have a high school diploma, who are leading to a rise in crime, because that's what we're seeing. And this is almost certainly deliberate. It's not something that we should have allowed. But in any case, getting back to the situation in Europe and the United States, it does look like the Habsburg dynasty, that's the King of Spain, whose cousin is Prince William, and then the people controlling Hungary, are making a move to remove Satanists from the very top levels of Western power, and this is why we were seeing a new Trump and the Starmer's out. When we see Friedrich Merz removed from Germany, that'll be a sign that the battle is well underway. And I'm assuming that Macron and the French Rothschilds will be the last to surrender, but they're already asking for permission to leave to the Kerguelen Islands and go into self-exile. So that will happen. And when that happens, we can have a financial system whose purpose is not to create a greater Israel and kill 90% of the world and enslave the rest, which is what the people who control the financial system have been doing up until now. Instead, we'll have people who do what people want. What do people want? They want to be richer, they want to live longer, they want to be healthier, they want to be happier, and that's the sort of thing that will start happening. And this will mean major reforms. It's not going to be easy, but the medical system, for example, will once again make it be structured so that the healthier people get, the longer they live, the more money doctors make. Right now, it's the opposite, and everything will be much better. We're gonna have, but it's gonna require a big international meeting. It's got to be public. It's not, but at the high level with the assassinations and the arrests and everything. A tipping point has been reached. The White Hats are in charge of the military now, and they've done it in the UK now as well. And China also had a big purge. It's not been in the news, but most of their top military were removed because they were corrupted by the cabal and the total surveillance society that China was becoming is being changed, and it's a much more benevolent group in power now. So that has changed and it hasn't been seen. But I expect things to move a bit sideways over the summer, but I'm I'm pretty sure that if we all keep pushing, make sure that Starmer is not replaced by another member of the same cabal, then things will happen very quickly. And the UK has had, 7 prime ministers in 10 years? That's a sign of a failed state. In other words, the same group puts in another person following the same agenda with, increases in illegal immigration and all the economic mismanagement. It's just going to lead to more collapse. So something fundamental has to change, and that means a general election will have to be held. So let's push for that. Let's make sure that Farage or someone like him is there, and there could be genuine reform. And the United States too needs to go through a formal bankruptcy so that we can take over the ownership of the corporation. That bubble, they've lost $600 billion in so-called market value recently. And they should lose a lot more, but already the other AI companies are giving up on their IPOs, so that bubble has burst. And the other thing that's happening is Saudi Arabia has been isolated, and their control of the oil industry and OPEC's control of the oil industry has shifted, and we're now actually seeing a military alliance between the U.S. and Iran. And this has been good for the U.S. in a lot of ways. For one thing, together with the Iranians, they can get a lot of control back over the oil industry. The other thing that is happening is that the Middle East will have peace finally, and Israel will be replaced by the nation-state of Judea. Right now, the Iranian military and the U.S. military are talking. The U.S. military will leave the region, and then the Turks and Iranians will take care of the situation. But things are going pretty well overall. However, this summer is probably going to be hard for a lot of people because the system hasn't yet completely collapsed, and it can only rebuild once these people are fully and finally removed. But that is going to happen, I promise you. Okay, well, that's what I have to say for myself. Now I'd like to answer questions from readers and viewers.
Hi, Ben. We have our first question for today. We're hearing a lot about riots going on right now in Paris, France, as well as a big push by a lot of Europeans across Europe to push these migrants out. What are your thoughts on this, and do you think the Europeans will take back their home from these invaders?
Well, the Europeans have already signed a 30-day deportation law, and they've closed a loophole that allowed people who were given deportation orders to go from France to Germany and then drop off the radar. And now there's nowhere in Europe they can hide. So, military-aged men who are not European and who are not working should be kicked out and returned to their countries. They were brought in for nefarious reasons, and they need to remove. If they have a job and they're contributing to society, then I think they should be allowed to stay. But if they're just hanging around street corners or mooching off welfare, they should be kicked out. It's about time. And it'd be better if the governments did more, but that will happen. And it's going to happen in the UK, too, because things have gone way overboard there with these Muslim rape gangs and all that other stuff that's been happening. This is not what Europe is about. And it's a good thing. And I'm in favor of immigration when you're getting people who have skills that we don't have, who can contribute to society and, provide us with new types of food and all the other good things, but not these huge influx of military age, low education males. That was deliberate social sabotage, and the sooner they're removed, the better. And I hope Germany has a change in government soon, so Germany can once again be ruled by the Germans. Next question.
Hi, Ben. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the modern-day state of Israel, given the history of how they were formed and how they had originally stolen land from the Palestinians that brought them into their home in the 1950s. Should Israel even exist in its current state?
No, my belief is that Israel should be replaced by a multi-ethnic, multi-religious state of Judea, which would include full rights to the original Judeans, who are misleadingly called Palestinians, and the Jews who wish to stay will be allowed to live in peace, but the genocidal people will have to face war crimes tribunals. That's my view. But no, Israel should not continue as it is. It's a racist state, and it's now widely recognized as the main source of terrorism and evil on this planet. These are Satan worshippers. They're not Jews, and they should be dealt with. Next question.
Ben, you often take up the P2, P3, Freemason, and Black Sun, but could you please expose the dialogue of Peter Thiel? Members may include seemingly white hats.
Yeah, I've got a list of the members of this, and it's people like Jared Kushner, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Ted Cruz, and I think this is the group that was pushing for the AI Mark of the Beast digital control system. But the fact that Thiel has fled to Argentina and Kushner has been looking for a underground base to hide in, and the fact that their names have been hacked and published shows that this group is no longer in charge. But I am looking into it. But a lot of people have been exposing it, and once they're exposed, that's it. It's game over. And also, I have a personal grudge against the whole PayPal people, because they shut down my site. They stole $15,000 from me. And as far as I'm concerned, they're criminals and they belong in jail. Next question.
Ivan, we have our last question for today. You mentioned earlier that the Trump in office is not the same Trump that started the Iranian war. Do you believe now that this is the real Trump that was elected in 2016?
What it is that it's the faction. No, I mean, the Trump who existed until June of 2025 was 6'3", was quite handsome. And what's happened, though, is that the Trump we see now is following the agenda of the real Trump. So the people who are behind the real Trump have taken back control of the U.S. Commander-in-Chief's office, and they're going back to the agenda of the original White Hat Trump. So he is a spokesperson for the White Hats, but he's definitely not the same person. He's just representing the same group and following the same agenda. The Khazarian Mafia is now in a very desperate last-minute struggle to make sure that we never, ever escape the digital prison they're trying to build for us. Right now, Israel is trying to get American politicians to make it mandatory for to have 5-year jail sentences for people who criticize Israel. At the same time, they are installing face recognition software everywhere with cameras, and they will be able to identify you real time and arrest you for things you say or do. And it's not about crime. In one example, in the UK, a woman was arrested by 11 people who came in and while she was having a bath because of some text message she sent. This is just a private text message. This is not even public. And the reason why they're trying to crack down so much is because they are fighting for their lives. They know that this giant scam that they call a government is unraveling in real time. And this is what has been making us poor. I want to show you an example of how fake the government is. As I've written my reports with lots of evidence over the years, NASA stands for not a space agency. Now, in this clip, you can watch NASA astronaut Karen Nyborg explain how they fake or show how they fake spaceflight. Take a look. Okay, it's kind of funny, except that literally it's a slush fund that milks us out of billions of dollars, which then goes to bribe people and to enrich these criminals. And that's just a small example. We have, for example, Jared Kushner somehow coming up with $100 billion to buy Warner Brothers. Jared Kushner belongs in jail, not in charge of $100 billion money created out of thin air. And it's only going to get worse. They're setting up death squads in the United States, disguised as ICE agents, and they're rounding up dissidents as we speak. And they're trying to fire all patriots from the U.S. military and the enforcement agencies. And I have a special message for FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino. You need to get some men with guns and go and arrest Pam Bondi, okay? You're not just going to get anything done by complaining or threatening to resign. This is going to require men with guns. Remember, we're talking about a group of fake politicians. The medical system have degenerated to that point. It's just mind-boggling that it would allow this to happen, and then they have all their paid shills in the media scream whenever they try to, this is all because of a satanic cult of about 1 million members. Many of them are concentrated in high positions, and that's what we need to target. Now, I've asked my military contacts why the military doesn't do something about it. And what the story I got was that uh, anybody who was not obedient to the system and Israel never got promoted past colonel. So I would like to suggest that Colonel Douglas McGregor and his buddies start networking. And the key to doing this is to convince the military police that their commander-in-chief has been replaced by a fraud. Take a look at the Trump in this clip threatening the president of Colombia. That is obviously not Donald Trump. This is a Zionist fake who has been put in his place, and arresting him is your duty if you're in the military police. And we need to end this nightmare because they're turning up the screws, and they're really gonna try very hard to everybody else they can, and we need a mass uprising, and it is happening. And I ask people to take personal action. If you see one of these uh, Satanist Zionist puppets in public, confront them. Look what they did to Christy Noem of the Israeli Department of Homeland Security. Okay, that's what should happen every time these people appear in public. Better still is if you can arrest them, you know, make a citizen's arrest, but that would require men with guns. Again, we need the agencies and the military to understand that the people at the top are criminals, and they're trying to create a digital prison. An example of this was the Chabad death cult. Remember, they want to kill 90% of humanity and enslave the rest. It's in their writings. They just gave a reward to the Peter Thiel's company Palantir for facial recognition software, because this allows them, gives them the potential to turn the entire Western world into a huge slave camp. And that's what they're trying to do. The Swiss government rejected Palantir because they realized that this was going to turn the Swiss people into the puppets of Israel. And Israel itself needs to be dealt with. That's the heart of the beast. And, we're asking the Turkish to send in their military and clean that place up. Now, I'll give you a list of some names of people who, if we arrest them publicly, this nightmare should end. We've got Larry Fink, he should go. Jared Kushner, Ursula von der Leyen, Brigitte Macron, who my French intelligence sources tell me is actually Jean-Michel de Rothschild, Friedrich Merz of Germany, Keir Starmer in the UK, and the usual stuff. Of course, Benjamin Netanyahu has to be arrested. If we can get rid of these people, we can end this nightmare. And the other thing people do need to understand is no matter how grim the situation looks, this is confined to the West, and the West is headed for bankruptcy. There's no way they can avoid it. China just announced a $1 trillion trade surplus. And that's based on real things. That's, computers and televisions being put into boxes and shipped around the world. This is not hallucinatory numbers created on stock markets that don't actually have a basis in reality. And the West has some payments coming due, which they're not going to be able to make. So, for example, my French intelligence sources tell me that the EU and France have a whole bunch of bonds coming due by March, and they don't have the money to pay for it, which is why they're now talking about seizing Russian money that they have illegally frozen. But that's even if they seize that money, it's going to be a temporary stopgap because they just don't have the real economy to back up all their numbers and their bank computers. The same with the United States. These tariffs are bringing in less than a tenth of what the United States government needs. And I have asked the Chinese to please not finance this criminal circus anymore. We need to end this, and the West needs to start with a jubilee, cancel all the debt slavery, end it all, and then put really competent people in charge of economic planning and have them do it on behalf of the people and the elected representatives of the people. But in order to be able to have the elected representatives really represent the people, of course, we're going to need to take away control of the corporate media from these criminals so that people can get accurate information. At the same time, we have to ban uh, corporate donations and money being used to control politicians. In other words, uh, temporarily, we're going to need a military government to arrest all these blackmailed and bribed criminals, and then to restore freedom of the press before we can have real elections, and then we can have people who actually represent Americans, which is not what we have in politics now. And then we can start building the kind of future that people want. So the current young generation can afford a house, which they can't now. And again, I think it's probably going to be that 18 to 34-year-old generation that's going to have to take action because the baby boomers, too many of them are brainwashed and bribed, and they're not going to be able to take action. So it's going to be up to the young people. But I do hope that things are going to happen, but we all need to push. This is a dangerous time now. They are desperate, cornered animals, and they're trying everything they can to make sure that we never ever escape from the digital prison they're building. For example, the fake Trump is just saying states cannot regulate AI because they want to use these huge data centers and face recognition so they can put us under complete mental control before they themselves end up facing war crimes trials. And let's not sugarcoat it. With a fake mercenary company they called Russian, which wasn't. And this was to depopulate that country. This is a genocide. And of course, what's happening in Gaza. And then you have this reality TV guy, Pete Hegseth, pretending he's in charge of the military. He's not. He's not competent to be, and he needs to be arrested along with all the other people. So it's time to take action, folks. But even if you don't, I guarantee you this whole thing will implode. The rest of the world has already been liberated, and I don't see how they're going to be able to kick the can down the road much past maybe mid 2026 at the most. That's what the experts say, looking at the finances, and hopefully it'll all end sooner. But we need to take action. Okay, well that's what I have to say for myself today. Now I'd like to answer questions from readers and viewers.
Hi, Ben. We have our first question for today. You said that the Macrons were in China. Why do you believe that they were not picked up then and there? What are your thoughts?
Well, the Chinese actually obey international law, and they are formally the head of state of France and his wife, supposedly. So the Chinese respect international law, but at the same time, they made it clear they're not going to, provide these people with the money they came begging for, and that'll end it for that regime in France because they are bankrupt. They've lost the ability to steal resources from Africa, and without that, they're going to have to declare bankruptcy and then restructure everything. But what I'm hearing from my French sources is that there's going to be some kind of real regime change. It's not going to be peaceful, and it's going to be violent, and it's going to involve the military. So that's what's going to probably happen in France and probably the rest of the G7. Next question.
Evan, we haven't heard a whole lot about Palestine recently and the Israel invasion. Can you shed a little light about what is going on there right now?
Uh, Again, this is a last minute attempt by these criminals to have a state completely dominated only by their ethnic group, so that they can have a place where they can continue their transnational crime, their pedophilia, and everything else. And we need Egypt and we need Turkey to go in with their armies and clean that place up, and replace it with the multi-religious, multi-ethnic state of Judea. And I know there's support across the region for that, and it's time to do it. But the reason I don't follow the situation with Judea or Palestine closely is because it's an endless recurring loop of the same story over and over and over again. The same with the Ukraine. They say, "Oh, we're going to have peace." No, we're not. We're going to have peace. No, we're not. They're turning in circles, and it's time to step in and end that turn. Next question.
Hi, Ben. When the Trump administration bombs the boat from Venezuela, do you believe that they were actually drug smugglers on that boat, or was this some sort of show of force?
They may or may not have been drug smugglers, but it was still a show of force. And even if they were drug smugglers, under international military law, uh, that was a war crime, especially when you have it's in the U.S. Legal manual. When you have two people floating, helpless, shipwrecked, unable to, and that should then wake up all the other generals to the fact that they are sworn to obey the law and the Constitution, which a lot of them seem to have forgotten. Next question.
Speaking of Hegseth, what are your thoughts in regards to the White House changing his position from Secretary of Defense to Secretary of War? What's really the point of this?
The point is that they are bankrupt and they're threatening war, they're threatening mayhem and some kind of attempt to steal money. Although, to be honest, calling it Ministry of War is actually more honest. That's what they called it during World War II. And, right now, the way it's been since World War II, it's been an aggressor around the world. They have been waging war everywhere on behalf of people who don't have America's best interests at heart. So, at least they're being honest about calling it Department of War, but we really should have a Department of Defense whose only job should be to defend the American people, not go around stealing oil for the Zionist oligarchs as they do now. Next question.
Hi, Ben. Why are the white hats waiting to arrest these fake actors? What is the purpose for the wait? Do they not have the authority, or is it in regards to their ability?
I think that they're so used to obeying orders that they've been they're like being deer frozen in the headlights. They don't know what to do, and especially over since the Obama regime, only really dumb people have been promoted to the top. So it's going to have to be sold by the colonels, the people who actually do the real fighting, and not the armchair generals. I think that's what has to happen. Next question.
We have our last question for today. I think we're starting to see the upper limits of inflation and public unrest before we hit a breaking point in the United States and many other parts of the world. Do you expect a national or even global market crash or events of proportionate catastrophe to occur within the near future?
Well, it's easy to say there's a bubble. It's hard to say when it's going to pop, but clearly the stock market is way out of touch with any, sort of reality. So when you have Tesla, who's losing market share and whose products are now considered inferior, being worth more than all the other car companies in the world combined. That's just not true. It's fake. Same with all these AI companies, everything else. But the good thing is that the stock market isn't reality, okay? These are just numbers on computers. Even if it crashes and goes to zero, there will still be the same amount of houses, factories, farms, people, knowledge. And personally, I think they should just unplug all the financial system computers, and we need to reboot uh, and start with the elimination of all debt, to end debt slavery, and then get people back to work, working on behalf of the United States and the world and the people, and not on behalf of satanic, which is the case now. So I think there should be a controlled implosion of the stock market, and then it needs to be restored to its traditional function of actually assigning value based on traditional metrics. It's no longer the case. Now it's just people with money printing machines using the stock market to launder money to their friends. And that's why the United States real economy is losing to China big time. And if we don't improve our systems of economic governance, we are all going to be working for the Chinese. It's already happening. And it's going to get worse unless we start fixing the real economy and getting out of this virtual fake financialized economy. It's just it's broken. Okay, as an example, you have to have a 50-year mortgage to buy a house, and you spend the first 25 years just paying interest, and you end up paying $1.4 million for a $400,000 house. That house should only cost $10,000, and some kid in his 20s should be able to afford it. That's the sort of system we need. Okay, well, that's what I have to say for myself today, and I hope to see you again next.
Hello, Patriots. I'm at Restored Republic via a GCR update compiled by Judy Byington. President Trump has activated the green light. Be prepared for worldwide emergency alerts as the global military alliance takes over mainstream media, makes mass arrests, and brings in the global currency reset to gold asset-backed monies. Quote from an Anon: after discovering the truth, people are generally afraid of what they might have to change. An awareness that comes with responsibility. That growth can force you to question even the person you thought you were, though it was really a transformation into living in the peacefulness of a new reality. Judy note: we are 24 hours away from an event that will change the world forever. BRICS, NESARA, GESARA, and quantum financial system were sending shockwaves through the deep state. With gold-backed currencies and secure Q phones, the old order is collapsing. Prepare for a revolution. Carolyn Bessette Kennedy on Telegram. On Wednesday, August 12, 2026, President Trump gave the green light, activated the emergency broadcast system, ordered the global military alliance to take over the mainstream fake news media, make mass arrests. Be prepared for worldwide emergency alerts, blackouts, and 10 days of communication darkness. Why? The takeover of American liberties had been building since the end of the Civil War, when foreign interests took over America's tax system, although the real takeover began in earnest in 2009 when President Obama was fraudulently elected into office. Obama immediately and quietly established a shadow globalist deep state cabal government of radicals to sabotage the American people and their Constitution. The Obama Foundation and DNC network of criminals consisted of over 32,000 radicals with 25,000 more in training. An Obama executive order turned 8,000 civilian generals into a stay-behind army and replaced 6,000 plus of them with Obama deep state loyalists. Radicals were embedded all over the country for the purpose of causing chaos. Supporting them were leading technology companies, the entire left-leaning mainstream media, left-leaning academia, and universities. All have been working with the Chinese Communist Party, to which now the Democrat Party, using Democratic Socialists of America members, pledge their allegiance to the CCP in the takeover of America, and all of them deserve to go to Gitmo, face tribunals, and possibly hung for treason. Funding of these treasonous activities came from American taxpayers through political blackmail by the deep state cabal. Child sex trafficking ring centered in Ukraine and Zionist Israel. All was funded, of course, by U.S. taxpayer monies given by compromised politicians on both sides of the aisle. That's where Epstein P. Diddy, Bushes, Obamas, and Clintons, and a complex system of underground tunnels, private islands, and massive estates come in, used by the elites for their satanic worship, recorded and filmed for blackmail of politicians to keep the money, keep everyone and all the money in line. The CIA was in charge of blackmail activities. Their sophisticated mind control was perfected in Hitler's Nazi Germany. That's how far back this goes. It goes back even farther than that. The Nazis used the ancient knowledge of Satan's pedophile cults of multi-generational satanic families believed to be the descendants of Cain. And just a quick side note, listening to Jessie Sabodar, she comes from one of these Illuminati families, and they are here. So when the Nazis came over here, and maybe even before, these satanic bloodline families were put all over the place. And so there's like this secret underground, society of Satan worshiping families. They could be your next door neighbors. You wouldn't know it because they hide. They don't, they go to church. Usually it's Catholic churches they go to during the day, and pretend to be good Christians. But by night, they're doing rituals, and they have, probably secret rooms in their basements where they do things like that. It's really creepy. International shipping hubs and port authorities have been placed under strict military quarantine in order to prevent high-profile elite members of the cabal from escaping via private maritime fleets and diplomatic aircraft. Autonomous defense grids have activated across major continental sectors to enforce absolute airspace sovereignty, grounding all unregistered corporate aircraft and intercepting maritime vessels attempting unauthorized transit. Interpol and the Global Military Alliance have executed simultaneous raids on Central Intelligence black site archives, recovering decades of hidden financial records, blackmail vaults, and direct order logs, exposing the cabal's global financial manipulation. Deep within subterranean command nodes, military intelligence teams have successfully extracted the master cryptographic keys to global surveillance networks, permanently severing the communication lines of shadow directorates. Simultaneous tactical incursions target deep underwater fiber optic repeaters and orbital relay stations, cutting off the clandestine data loops utilized by international syndicates for market manipulation and coordinate sharing. Special operations teams have confiscated multi-billion-dollar offshore gold reserves and digital asset vaults tied to compromised sovereign wealth funds. Forensic accounting units secure multi-trillion-dollar corporate ledgers hidden inside sovereign tax havens, mapping out the exact capital flows that funded decades of covert geopolitical engineering. There have been mass detentions of senior international corporate directors and financial technocrats who were implicated in designing global supply chain bottlenecks and artificial scarcity networks that serve the cabal. Compromised executive boards and corrupt political figures were being transferred directly to secure facilities, including Gitmo. Over 100,000 military tribunal prosecutors and investigators have been deployed across secure jurisdictions to process millions of pages of recovered digital evidence and witness depositions. Evidence has been obtained in many ways. Emergency economic measures have been activated to freeze assets linked to the exposed shell corporations and offshore accounts. Central bank hubs across Switzerland, London, and New York are under direct audit as authorities unwind decades of illicit funding used to sustain global cabal operations. Over 200 major corporate entities, media conglomerates, and pharmaceutical fronts were facing immediate asset freezes. Financial controllers and compliance officers are cooperating with military intelligence to map out the entire liquidity chain and recover hidden funds. The transition to a quantum financial system was accelerating, backed by asset-backed manipulation. Old banking rails were being decommissioned to prevent capital flight by those named in the sealed indictments. Public disclosure broadcasts, EVS alerts, were scheduled to begin across major emergency alert system overrides. Documentary evidence, transaction ledgers, and digital forensics will be released globally and simultaneously. This was the systematic dismantling of the old guard. The financial infrastructure that supported impunity was collapsing. There may come a moment when the signal becomes quiet. A moment when the old internet does not answer the way it used to. A moment when platforms slow down, messages fail, websites disappear, banking apps freeze, payment rails become unstable, and the public begins asking the same question at the same time. What is happening? This is the moment people must remember one thing clearly. Do not panic. When the signal goes dark, fear will try to speak first. Confusion will move quickly. Screenshots will spread. Rumors will multiply. Fake accounts will appear. Scammers will pretend to have answers. Some will claim they can restore access. Some will ask for wallet information. Some will ask for passwords, seed phrases, private keys, documents, or payments. That is why discipline matters. The darkness of a signal does not mean the end. Sometimes it means the old network is being exposed. Sometimes it means weak systems are failing under pressure. Sometimes it means the final cracks are becoming visible before a stronger structure can rise. The people must understand the difference between collapse and transition. Collapse is control, uncontrolled. Transition is protected. Collapse leaves people lost. Transition requires patience, order, and calm. While the old structure is cleared and the new road is prepared, we, the White Hats, are not here to create fear. We are here to prepare the people for the moment when confusion tries to take control. If the signal goes dark, remain calm. Protect your accounts. Protect your family. Keep your devices secure. Do not click unknown links. Do not trust random messages. Do not give access to anyone claiming to be support. Do not act from panic. The loudest voices during darkness are not always the safest voices. This is why preparation must come before the moment. Follow only trusted sources. Keep important information backed up. Keep your communication calm and direct. Help your family understand that panic is not protection. Fear is not wisdom. Confusion is not truth. The old internet was never built to carry the future that is coming. It was built on weak passwords, exposed identities, fragile platforms, centralized control, hidden tracking, data harvesting, and digital gates that can be closed without warning. A new era requires more. It requires quantum safe protection, verified access, secure identity, cleaner communication, stronger financial rails, systems that protect the people instead of collecting, limiting, and manipulating them. That is why the signal may need to go dark before the new connection becomes visible, not as punishment, not as defeat, but as the final proof that the old network could not protect what comes next. When that moment comes, many will not understand it at first. They will see silence and call it failure. They will see darkness and call it danger. They will see disruption and believe the road has ended. But those who are prepared will understand the signal going dark is not always the end of communication. Sometimes it is the pause between two worlds, the old one losing power and the new one preparing to come online. If the signal goes dark, do not follow panic. Follow discipline. Protect your family. Protect your access. Protect your information. Protect your peace. Share it with your friends, your family, and every patriot who understands that the strongest people are not those who panic first, but those who stay calm when the world becomes quiet. The old signal may go dark, but darkness is not the final message. It is the silence before the new connection. Carolyn Bessette Kennedy on Telegram.
Global currency reset. On Tuesday, the 11th of August 2026, reports from Australia said bondholders were being funded, while other sources said bondholders were promised liquidation of their funds by Wednesday to Thursday, the 13th of August 2026. Other sources claimed that on Friday to Saturday 14, the 15th of August 2026, Tier 4 BUS, the Internet Group would be notified to set redemption exchange appointments. The Iraqi parliament was expected to release their new dinar rate by Saturday the 14th of August. On Tuesday the 1st of September 2026, the new gold-backed global financial system will be active and redemption centers will be open worldwide in 209 nations. Tuesday the 11th of August 2026. Bruce. Two sources in Canada were able to do exchanges today at one bank, but at lower rates. Confirmed from banking source in Canada, exchanges were taking place in India, Indonesia, and Pakistan. A military source believes Tier 4B will get notifications for Thursday or Friday. 13. The 14th of August and exchange appointments would be made for Friday or Saturday. 13. The 15th of August. Judy note: no one knows the exact date for notification of appointments for Tier 4 BES, the Internet group to exchange foreign currencies, but deadlines shown in the above timing indicate it to be very soon. We have been told that Wells Fargo, which is controlled by the Chinese elders, the ones who own the gold behind the global currency reset, will send out emails to currency and bondholders worldwide telling them how to set redemption and exchange appointments. It is advised to redeem your foreign currency at an official redemption center RSC rather than a bank. You can only redeem ZIM at RC. The dinar contract rate can only be given at RC, and banks will offer you lower exchange rates than what you can obtain at RC. You can only set up your new wallet bank account at ARC. It was my understanding that most banks were under control of the cabal and would soon play a different role in the global financial system.
What we think we know as of Thursday, August 13th, 2026. Big banks are trying to block pro-crypto policies. They're working overtime to control the narrative and slow down adoption. This is a wake-up call for the crypto community. Wednesday, August 12th, 2026. Follow the money. 11 corporations control 90% of consumer goods. The brands compete, the owners don't. A small number of investment giants hold major stakes across much of the corporate world. The more you look, the more the illusion of choice begins to fade. Wednesday, August 12th, deep within subterranean command nodes, military intelligence teams have successfully extracted the master cryptographic keys to global surveillance networks, permanently severing the communication lines of shadow directorates. Simultaneous tactical incursion target deep underwater fiber optic repeaters and orbital relay stations, cutting off the clandestine data loops utilized by international syndicates for market manipulation and coordinate sharing. Forensic accounting units secure multi-trillion-dollar corporate ledgers hidden inside sovereign tax havens, mapping out the exact capital flows that funded decades of covert geopolitical engineering. Autonomous defense grids activate across major continental sectors to enforce absolute airspace sovereignty, grounding all unregistered corporate aircraft and intercepting maritime vessels attempting unauthorized transit. The transition to distributed local governance and hard asset monetary settlements is now enforced by joint task forces, replacing centralized compliance monopolies. Evidence vaults containing classified medical patents, suppressed energy designs, and advanced propulsion schematics are preparing for public release via decentralized quantum nodes. The architecture of control has been permanently dismantled. Verify all intelligence through secure channels as the new infrastructure comes online.
U.S. debt clock breaking news: $40 trillion alarm. U.S. debt clock blows past the historic mark as America's debt train isn't stopping. U.S. debt clock projects America's national debt above $40.1 trillion as official Treasury figures close in on the historic $40 trillion mark. See the staggering debt per taxpayer numbers and why America's exploding debt is becoming an urgent issue for Trump, Congress, and the American people. America's debt warning is becoming impossible to ignore. The U.S. debt clock is now projecting national debt above $40 trillion, with the live display at approximately $40.11 trillion. The U.S. debt clock states the figure is algorithmically projected from latest Treasury data. The live $40.11 trillion should not be confused with the latest official Treasury balance. As of August 10, 2026, the latest Treasury-based figure stood at approximately $39.92 trillion. America is extraordinarily close to a $40 trillion national debt, and the U.S. debt clock's real-time projection has already crossed that psychological line. Alongside the projected $40.11 trillion, the clock showed debt per person of approximately $119,735, debt per taxpayer of approximately $286,508. and interest per day of approximately $3.8 billion. These are U.S. debt clock calculations, not official balances. They illustrate the extraordinary scale of federal indebtedness. Washington continues to carry an enormous and growing debt burden. President Donald Trump inherited an enormous federal debt burden when he returned to the White House. But his administration and the current Congress now confront the fundamental responsibility. What will they do from this point forward? That is where an America First fiscal argument becomes genuinely pro-people. Ordinary Americans do not benefit from Washington pointing backward while the debt counter climbs. The real question is whether Washington can finally change its direction. The debt train has moved through Republican and Democratic administrations for decades. Trump and the current Congress now hold responsibility for decisions on their watch. For the American people, the question is simpler than partisan blame. Who is prepared to confront the spending, deficits, interest costs, and pressures that keep pushing the number higher? The warning from the U.S. debt clock is already staring America in the face. The number is getting bigger. The interest bill is growing. And the American people deserve a serious plan to change the trajectory.
Wednesday, August 12th, Barack Obama's Patriot Purge in the U.S. government that created a secret deep state stay-behind army, Edward Snowden on Telegram. This is the origin of the Obama-era deep state that's actively undermining Trump, his administration, and America itself. Even though this has been intelligence ties, this is not the CIA, the FBI, or the NSA. This is another piece of the operation. This is the SES, the Senior Executive Service, created under Carter and weaponized under Obama. In December 2015, one single executive order turned 8,000 civilian generals into a stay-behind army, replaced 6,000 plus of them with Obama deep state loyalists, embedding this army in every single agency. That's our deep state. Department of Education, 86, Department of Housing and Urban Development, 115, Department of Air Force, 182, Department of Labor, 200, Department of State, 204, Department of Transportation, 231, Department of Interior, 258, Department of the Army, 261, Department of the Navy, 326, Department of Veteran Affairs, 357, Department of Agriculture, 361, Department of Commerce, 425, Department of Treasury, 458, Department of Health and Human Services, 468, Department of War, 478, Department of Energy, 490, Department of Homeland Security, 639. Isn't that what FEMA falls under? Department of Justice, 821. All other agencies, non-cabinet, 1,796. These are just the ones we know of. There are more. So, side note, Trump's been trying to, in his administration and the White House have been trying to locate who these people are and purge them. Also, I'm guessing every Western nation probably has this form of deep state, like some type of continuity of government, senior executive service, but it's probably titled something different. Obama then gutted the military, 197 flag officers, 9 commanding generals, nuclear commanders, along with thousands of other non-commanding officers. Remember Benghazi? Carter Ham and Chuck Goet fired for trying to save Americans during the horrific Benghazi attack, overseen by Hillary Clinton. Obama wasn't the boss, he was the front man. The SES is the real deep state, the traitorous unelected force, loyal to Obama and other globalist scumbags who are still running the show and embedded in the Trump administration under Trump, but actively working against him. We've already heard people like Project Veritas catching people on, film saying, well, we're trying to slow things down so Trump can't get things accomplished. That's what they're doing. That's who they are. Next time you decide to think everything is so easy, or you think everything can be fixed at the flick of a pen, think again. You have no idea what we're truly up against. But in the end, we will be victorious because the will and passion inside American patriots and the truth itself will always prevail. Judgment is on its way, and it won't be pretty. World under martial law, global military alliance has seized mainstream media, international shipping hubs, port authorities under quarantine, over 80,000 military operations units deployed in political capitals as new gold-backed global financial system weapon.
Judy note, word from valid military sources was that on Moan. 10 Aug. 2026, the Global Military Alliance initiated full seizure of the mainstream media broadcasting networks and corporate news headquarters. The transition to worldwide martial law was now 100% complete. The military had complete oversight of critical infrastructure, and the old cabal power structure was unable to recover or communicate. Now all secure broadcast channels were on standby for the imminent broadcast of documentary archives and prosecution logs across all intercepted networks. There was a full deactivation of global satellite communication backbones used by the corporate media and deep state command cells. All was in preparation for implementation of the Emergency Broadcast System, EBS. Interpol and the Global Military Command have executed simultaneous raids on Central Intelligence black site archives, recovering decades of hidden financial records, blackmail vaults, and direct order logs. In the process, the Global Military Alliance exposed direct funding trails to the cabal's global financial manipulation campaigns. The emergency special operations teams confiscated multi-billion-dollar offshore gold reserves and digital asset vaults tied to compromised sovereign wealth funds. Space Force defense units have neutralized foreign satellite infrastructure used by elite cabal networks for encrypted command and control operations. A massive military sweep across elite private islands and subterranean facility networks has confirmed a complete neutralization of rogue operations and underground human logistics nodes. International shipping hubs and port authorities have been placed under strict military quarantine in order to prevent high-profile elites from escaping via private maritime fleets and diplomatic aircraft. Over 80,000 military police and special operations units have been deployed across major financial and political capitals in order to secure critical infrastructure during the ongoing global transition. Allied command structures have confirmed that the asset recovery and trials infrastructure was operating at full capacity. There have been mass detentions of senior international corporate directors and financial technocrats who were implicated in designing global supply chain bottlenecks and artificial scarcity networks. Compromised executive boards and corrupt political figures were being transferred directly to secure facilities. Over 100,000 military tribunal prosecutors and investigators have been deployed across secured jurisdictions to process millions of pages of recovered digital evidence and witness depositions. Evidence has been obtained in many ways. Deep within subterranean command nodes, military intelligence teams have successfully extracted the master cryptographic keys to global surveillance networks, permanently severing the communication lines of shadow directorates. Simultaneous tactical incursions target deep underwater fiber optic repeaters and orbital relay stations, cutting off the clandestine data loops utilized by international syndicates for market manipulation and coordinate sharing. Forensic accounting units secure multi-trillion-dollar corporate ledgers hidden inside sovereign tax havens, mapping out the exact capital flows that funded decades of covert geopolitical engineering. Autonomous defense grids have activated across major continental sectors to enforce absolute airspace sovereignty, grounding all unregistered corporate aircraft and intercepting maritime vessels attempting unauthorized transit. The transition to distributed local governance and hard asset monetary settlement was now enforced by joint task forces that have replaced centralized compliance monopolies. Evidence vaults containing classified medical patents, suppressed energy designs, and advanced propulsion schematics are preparing for public release via decentralized quantum nodes. The architecture of control has been permanently dismantled. The final phases of the systemic restructuring were unfolding. The old paradigm was gone. Emergency quantum broadcast networks were prepared to stream unedited evidence logs and witness testimonies across all intercepted channels worldwide. It was recommended that you maintain secure communications and monitor verified channels for live updates. QFS goes live soon. The Fiat system's final days have begun. Redemption centers to activate on September 1, 2026. The countdown has started. The fiat system is crumbling no matter how much they lie. Starting September 1, 2026, redemption centers will go fully live under military protection and begin processing gold-backed transactions through the quantum financial system. This won't be theory. It will be reality. The old financial system will collapse before the eyes of the world, and the cabal won't be able to stop it. Global military units led by Trump's alliance will soon begin massive raids targeting elite-controlled vaults. Stolen gold, off-ledger assets, ritual finance archives, all of it will be seized and redirected into the QFS using advanced light intelligence tech. These hidden reserves are not inside banks. They lie beneath. Mountains, Vatican catacombs, and abandoned NATO bases. The illusion of elite financial control is about to be destroyed. If you still have funds in traditional banks, prepare. Over 12,000 branches are expected to shut down in the weeks ahead. Not downsized. Fully disconnected from the QFS grid. The dollar you know will soon be worthless. Your only access to sovereign wealth will be through redemption centers where you must be verified, scanned, and approved to receive gold-backed USDNs. The cabal, sensing the end, is expected to launch final attacks, EMPs, bioweapons, digital sabotage. A classified plan known as Last Breath is already circulating, including media blackouts, false flags, and infrastructure disruption. But they will fail. Space Force is on standby to intercept EMP threats, with cyber divisions monitoring for viral deployment and digital infiltration. Every weapon they have will be neutralized. Justice is coming. Social security systems are being rebuilt, decoupled from surveillance networks and restructured for sovereign use. You will no longer be treated as a product. Your biometric data will be protected. Behavioral monetization will be banned. Under Trump's Patriot Wealth Directive, restitution and reparation, R&R, payouts will begin mid-February, direct gold-backed compensation for IRS fraud, the planned control grid. It won't happen. CBDCs will collapse. SWIFT will be replaced. The only approved digital assets under QFS will be RLUSD and XRP, both engineered for sovereign, secure exchange. RLUSD will be backed by gold recovered from NATO vaults. XRP will serve as the bridge to eliminate fiat entirely. Every transaction will be tracked, encrypted, and protected by military-grade quantum tech. This is not speculation. This is what's coming. Their world ends. Ours begins September 1, 2026.
On Tuesday, September 1st, 2026, the transition begins. September 1st, the quantum financial system officially moves from testing to live global sync. Major banking grids will begin quiet shutdown procedures as transactions reroute through the QFS network. The Federal Reserve, IMF, and SWIFT systems will freeze cross-border operations, while asset-backed settlements activate in real time. Governments will start recalibrating national ledgers to gold-based reserves. Key nations, the U.S., Netherlands, India, Brazil, and Japan, are confirmed for first-wave integration. Encrypted broadcasts will announce the new digital-to-physical conversion standard. Expect market volatility, temporary outages, and data synchronization delays. This is the crossover point. Tuesday, August 11, 2026, national emergency. Trump ignites NESARA payouts, $3.5 trillion in seized elite funds, surging to verified patriots as globalists launch desperate sabotage to stop the reset. On Sunday, August 9, 2026, the NESARA storm broke wide open. The old fiat slave system began collapsing in real time as Trump unleashed the greatest wealth transfer in history.
Trillions clawed from the deep state's black vaults were flooding into the quantum financial system, QFS, rerouting straight to awakened Americans. The cabal is panicking, hammering servers, jamming routes, and screaming through their fake news puppets, but they can't stop what's already in motion. Trump flipped the switch on NESARA Tier 1 in late December 2025, activating it silently over the holidays while the world slept. No parades, no pressers, just cold, hard execution. The QFS is live, identities syncing, funds moving through military-secured channels. Over $3.5 trillion in stolen elite wealth is being redistributed. CIA off-ledger slush funds, human trafficking empires hidden in NGO shells, rigged election interference cash from 2020 and 2022, Big Pharma extortion billions, endless war profiteering loot, all seized and reassigned. These assets blast through 14 fortified nodes across U.S. and European military bases, encrypted, decentralized, untouchable by the Fed, IMF, or any banker vampire. Redemption is rolling in stealth waves. Early verified accounts are lighting up in pre-release mode. But the globalists are fighting dirty. Server attacks, routing blocks, disinformation floods to breed doubt and delay. Timelines stretched. Expect major triggers firing early to mid-September 2026, with final Tier 1 waves pushing into March if the resistance drags on. The next 30-40 days are do or die. Once Tier 1 seals, the door slams shut forever. Elites are bleeding out. $380 billion already vaporized from offshore hideouts. BlackRock and Vanguard empires gutted over crooked contracts. European pension funds hemorrhaging, luxury properties dumped in panic sales. They're cornered, furious, lashing out because their entire parasitic empire is crumbling. But the QFS holds strong, military-grade armor, automated, unstoppable. Payouts push forward for the verified patriots first in line. This is the hammer drop Trump promised. No more debt slavery, no more cabal control. White hats dominate the battlefield, arrests are imminent, the Republic rises from the ashes. The Great Awakening isn't coming, it's here, redistributing the spoils of war back to we the people. Bank glitches will spike in February as the old matrix fractures. Stay vigilant, stay offline where it counts, watch the signs, the storm peaks now. The deep state knows it's over. Their missile blackmail, their rigged elections, their endless grift, all ending under Trump's iron will. We're taking it all back, crushing the New World Order, firing up the Golden Age. Trust the plan. The wealth is flowing, the reset is real, victory is locked in. The cabal trembles, the patriots rise.
Tuesday, August 11, 2026. Global financial reset and asset seizure underway following recent tribunal disclosures. Emergency economic measures have been activated to freeze assets linked to exposed shell corporations and offshore accounts. Central bank hubs across Switzerland, London, and New York are under direct audit as authorities unwind decades of illicit funding used to sustain global operations. Over 200 major corporate entities, media conglomerates, and pharmaceutical fronts are facing immediate asset freezes. Financial controllers and compliance officers are cooperating with military intelligence to map out the entire liquidity chain and recover hidden funds. The transition to a quantum financial system is accelerating, backed by asset-backed currencies. Deemed to eliminate debt-based manipulation, old banking rails are being decommissioned to prevent capital flight by those named in the sealed indictments. Public disclosure broadcasts are scheduled to begin across major emergency alert system overrides. Documentary evidence, transaction ledgers, and digital forensics will be released simultaneously globally to ensure full transparency. This is the systematic dismantling of the old guard. The financial infrastructure that supported impunity is collapsing. Stay informed and verify all updates through secure channels.
Mass arrests, detentions, evidence gathering, Tier 4B secures mainframe access to central intelligence and deep state data servers, exposing direct funding trails to global manipulation campaigns. Emergency special operations teams confiscate multi-billion-dollar offshore gold reserves and digital asset vaults tied to compromised sovereign wealth funds. Mass detentions of senior international corporate directors and financial technocrats implicated in designing global supply chain bottlenecks and artificial scarcity networks. Space Force defense units neutralize foreign satellite infrastructure used by elite cabal networks for encrypted command and control operations. Over 100,000 military tribunal prosecutors and investigators deployed across secured jurisdictions to process millions of pages of recovered digital evidence and witness depositions.
What we think we know as of Wednesday, August 12, 2026. Tuesday, August 11th, Supreme Court breaking. Justice Alito is staying. Trump celebrates. Great news for our country. Tuesday, August 11th, 2026. Explosive report. Mamdani video goes viral. His own words about identity and political power. Tuesday, August 11th, breaking. He's free. Trump helps bring Marine veteran Robert Gilman home after 1,666 days in Russia. No prisoner swap, no concessions.
It's Wednesday. It's the 12th of August, 2026. Everything you're watching is a movie. It's a pantomime. It's been going on for a lot longer than what you'd ever imagine. They've set this all up so that you were ready for this sort of grand finale of this movie. I was doing some research this morning, having had a conversation with a good friend of mine from Pakistan, who told me that in the 1950s and the 1960s, Pakistan had an agreement with the United Kingdom to get rid of a group of uneducated Pakistanis, people they didn't want in Pakistan. This was back in the 1950s and 1960s. And these Pakistanis were from a place called Mirpur, Mirpur. They're more Mirpuris. They have a tendency to rape their own mothers and sisters. They are completely uneducated. The Pakistanis didn't want them anymore because they were a problem. And somehow, behind your back and my back, the British government brought them into the UK and settled them in London, in Birmingham, in Luton, in the whole of the Midlands, Middle England. And today, there's around 70% of the Pakistanis in the UK from that part of the world, from that part of Pakistan. Today, 70% of the Pakistanis are the unwanted Pakistanis that Pakistan didn't want, that we took in the 50s and 60s. Now, I will say that I know some very, very good, intelligent, nice men and women from Pakistan. They know this. And they are sick and tired of being tarred with the same brush. But it's important that we point out the facts. The facts are the British government took these undesirables and integrated them into the UK. And this is why we have the problem in the UK of the rape gangs, because it's in their DNA. They're used to raping their mothers and their sisters. It's in their DNA. And we're now seeing it in Europe with the undesirables from Africa and the Middle East, the Islamic extremists that their own countries don't want. And in the case of the Moroccans that were entered into Ceuta, the northern coast of Africa, where there's a Spanish area, an enclave, where they invaded, 20,000 of those were let out of prison with a pardon. They again were undesirable and unwanted. And they've been trying to push these people into Europe. So why are they doing it? The question is why? Why would they let these people out of prison and push them into Europe and the UK and also America? Why? Well, it's all part of a long, long agenda. This agenda goes back 50 years, maybe 70 years. It goes back to destabilize the UK, Europe and America so that they can usher in their one world government. So that we go, our government can't even deal with it. So they'll come up with a solution. We've got a one world government. This was their plan all along. So that your country being filled with undesirables is not by mistake. It's by design. And when you wake up to that fact, you'll realize what's going on. And you'll have a big problem because the undesirables, as an example, from Somalia, from Pakistan, from North Africa, they don't want them back. They don't want them back. They don't want them in their countries. They're happy because their prison population has gone down. Their costs have gone down. It's our problem now. But as I've said many times in life, Preventing a problem is far easier than providing a solution to a problem, because the solution to the problem is not an easy one. The UK is now in a complete mess. Europe is in a complete mess. England, Germany, and France are on the verge of total bankruptcy, run by puppets that have been installed by the deep state and the cabal to collapse it so they can bring in their one world government. My question to you is the same one I've asked you for 7 years. Are you awake yet? Morning, Drew.
Good morning, Charlie. Good morning, everyone. A California city has declared a state of emergency after a major cyber attack disrupted government computer systems, including 9/11 and emergency communications. Suisun City Hall remains closed. Federal agencies are investigating, and officials are now considering a demand reportedly made by the attackers.
This is all something we're going to see. It started in California. We're going to have cyber attacks. It started in California. It's going to be across Europe, across the UK, across the world. We had one in Spain where we had no electric for virtually a whole day. It causes chaos. And this is how they manipulate you, because if you live in fear, you're very easy to manipulate. And if you don't live in fear, you're not. I don't live in fear. This is what I'm trying to prepare my audience for, is what they're doing right now is trying to make you live in fear. Whether it's to do with Ukraine or Iran or Venezuela or the Straits of Hormuz, it's all about creating fear. Because I'll tell you right now, the deep state are in complete panic. They're losing control, but they don't just give up. They've had control all their lives. Now they're losing it. And they don't like it. And they're not going to let go easily. They're going to cause all kinds of distractions. And if they can shut down the power, they can shut down the fuel, they can shut down the internet, they will. They'll do anything to make you scared. Now, both Drew and I, if they shut down the internet, we'd be able to sit back and relax. There's a lot of people out there that would go into complete and utter panic mode because they depend on the internet, whether it's for their YouTube channel, their TikTok channel, their Instagram channel, or whether it's just paying for stuff. Because if the internet goes down, the credit card machines don't work because they depend on the internet. So unless you've got some cash, you can't do anything. We've warned you about this for a long time. The person out there that has a little bit of cash, a little bit of food set aside for these attacks that are coming, and they'll come to you very, very soon, they're real. All we're trying to do is prepare you for them. And if you get away with not having one, well done. But by the law of averages, it's going to happen to you one day. So be prepared. That's all we say. Be prepared. Drew.
Next up, Britain is on course for its hottest summer on record, while a major wildfire continues to burn in the New Forest. Nearly 3/4 of England is now affected by the drought conditions, with reservoirs and rivers under increasing pressure. They're taking our water and cooking us like chickens, Charlie.
They certainly are. Well, in my case, they're cooking them like turkeys. But yeah, you're absolutely right. We were told to watch the water. They're trying to take it away. There's fires everywhere. They're doing everything they can to destroy the planet on the way out because they've lost control of it. And this evening, we've got Derek Johnson on the Insiders Club. And he's going to be explaining to you the laws and orders of what's going on that you can't see. Because I can assure you that God is fully in control of what's happening. But from a visual point of view, we're watching the dismantling of an old system. There's no way that they can win. The other thing I would say to you is it's very important that you don't just stop. I spoke to somebody yesterday who just stopped. They're waiting for everything to happen. I'm getting on with my life, staying close to God. I'm currently in Singapore. I've been in Dubai. I've been in Abu Dhabi. I'm going to be in Istanbul. I'm going to be back in Malaga. I carry on with what I'm doing. And if God stops me, I'll stop. But in the meantime, I will carry on doing what I have to do. Because you can't just stop and wait for things to happen. There's too many people whose lives have just come to a stop because they've believed the people out there that have misled them that it's going to happen tomorrow. Nobody knows exactly when it's going to happen. It's going to happen at the right time. And God is testing each and every one of us to see where we're at. God wants you to keep working, to keep focused, to do what you can. There are many people that have already started their humanitarian work, and God is watching.
Command authorizes nationwide emergency broadcasting overrides to transmit 10 days of hidden documentary evidence and confessions directly to all public screens. The emergency deployment of Space Force communications relays to lock down secure quantum channels and block corporate media censorship entirely. Mass seizures of underground medical facilities and subterranean transit. Hubs across North America and Europe by combined special operations forces. International banking consortia and central ledger systems confirmed completely offline as the full transition to asset-backed currency protocols takes effect. Over 150,000 sealed indictments unsealed simultaneously across federal districts, triggering immediate asset freezes and executive detention orders for international corporate titans and compromised media executives. Sun. 9 Aug. 2026. Mass cyber blackouts neutralize corporate data centers and deep state communication backbone.
Global intelligence alliances have confirmed that secure military tribunals are now in session around the clock. The scale of the documentation recovered from secure servers ensures that all involved actors face immediate prosecution under war crime jurisdiction. Citadel protocols remain active worldwide. Civilian governance structures are replaced by direct operational command to maintain absolute public security during the systematic dissolution of the old elite class. This is the turning point. The network is deconstructed. Stay plugged into secure channels for continuous disclosure logs as the new paradigm unfolds.
And the National Quantum Initiative Act, the financial revolution uncovered. And the National Quantum Initiative Act for centuries, governments and financial elites have used money as a means of control, perpetuating cycles of debt and economic instability. The very monetary systems we've depended on have acted as tools of manipulation, limiting freedom and opportunity for individuals worldwide. But imagine a paradigm shift, a revolutionary financial framework capable of dismantling these chains and fostering global prosperity. Enter the quantum financial system, QFS, an AI-driven, asset-backed financial model that seeks to transform the global economy. Unlike the current fiat-based system, susceptible to manipulation by central banks and governments, the QFS is grounded in tangible assets like gold, platinum, and silver. It offers a secure, transparent, and incorruptible alternative aimed at eradicating the vulnerabilities of the paper-based monetary system. The QFS operates in alignment with the National Quantum Initiative Act, a legislative push to advance quantum technologies critical for powering this groundbreaking financial infrastructure. In tandem with this initiative, concepts like NESARA, GESARA, and digital currencies, such as Ripple's XRP, are poised to usher in an era of unprecedented financial freedom and fairness. The Quantum Financial System, QFS. The QFS marks a monumental departure from traditional banking and fiat currencies, which derive their value solely from government declarations. Under the current system, inflation, debt, and economic crises are rampant, affecting individuals and entire nations. The QFS proposes a solution, anchoring the monetary system to real, tangible assets. by backing the system with gold, platinum, and silver. The QFS ensures stability and prevents governments from inflating currency by printing money arbitrarily. This asset-backed approach protects individuals and businesses from the devastating consequences of financial mismanagement. Additionally, the QFS integrates artificial intelligence, AI, to guarantee transparency, accountability, and incorruptibility. Transactions are verified in real time, enabling secure and instantaneous cross-border payments while eliminating human errors and opportunities for corruption. This AI-powered transparency represents a true revolution in the global financial landscape. XRP. The bridge currency of the QFS central to the QFS's functionality is Ripple's XRP, a digital asset designed to revolutionize international payments. Ripple has been a pioneer in the cryptocurrency sector, focusing on reducing costs and delays associated with cross-border money transfers. XRP's scalability, speed, and security make it an ideal fit for the demands of the QFS, which will operate globally and continuously. Ripple's XRP ledger can process vast volumes of transactions almost instantaneously, ensuring the QFS remains efficient and effective. As the world transitions away from fiat currencies, XRP is well-suited to act as a bridge currency, facilitating seamless exchanges between different asset-backed currencies within the QFS ecosystem. Moreover, the International Standard for Financial Messaging positions XRP as a key player in the QFS. This alignment ensures smooth integration into the evolving global financial infrastructure, where standardization and interoperability are becoming increasingly critical.
Can be no doubt about that. The U.S. government shut down on October 1st, and there's no sign that it's going to reopen. September 30th is the fiscal year end for the United States Corporation, and it looks like this time they really didn't get the money to continue. Now, what I know from previous experience is that when there's a default at the international level, they're given 15 days to come up with the money. And that means that if I am right about this, starting sometime next week, the U.S. military will no longer be receiving their paychecks, and it will be game over for the current system. I'm hoping this is going to happen, and we're trying to set up a war council to deal with the transition away from the United States Corporation and to something that, once again, restores power to the people. Now, to understand how important this is, I want you to take a look at this picture here. This is the Trump cabinet meeting with the heads of the Chabad Lubavitch organization. These people are not Jews. They worship Satan. Their founder, the fact that the Trump cabinet is in on this is a sign that they need to be removed, and that's why the white hats have placed a 100-kilogram bounty on each person in that photograph. And my understanding is that if these people who are trying to kill you, your friends, and your family are removed, arrested, and brought to justice, that the reward can be collected at any BRICS nation embassy, or perhaps or Taiwan or China. In other words, also they have to be removed. And the fact that Trump is in that picture tells you everything. Now, the other thing is, that right now Donald Trump is talking about sending Tomahawk missiles to Russia. Okay? Now, that is nothing more than an attempt to start World War III, because if Tomahawk missiles are sent to Russia, that means only Pentagon officials, U.S. military people, have the ability to carry such attacks out. And that means that they're going to try to start World War III, which is exactly what Chabad wants. And the other thing that the military and the intelligence community need to understand is that the civilian governments in the West are not working for the people. They are controlled by this cult through a combination of blackmail and bribery. Now, I want you to watch this clip to see exactly, what the situation is with the U.S. Senate.
That's their point of view. And they're saying, okay, if you don't take that view, we may come after you.
So you can see that 93 out of 100 senators do not work for the American people. They work for Benjamin Netanyahu, which is, the majority of the people. This is just not right. This is not a system of government. This is a system of slavery. Now, I understand that there is an attempt by Trump to, impose military law, and he wants to use U.S. troops to go after his opponents in the United States. And, to his credit, he is going after Antifa and George Soros and all these, terror groups financed by the Zionists or the Satanists, and that's a good thing. But it's not, it's not enough just to go after your enemies. The whole thing has to be cleaned up, and until we see the Epstein stuff out there, this is not going to work. And the other thing is that there's nothing he can do about the United States being bankrupt. He's not going to be able to extort enough money from Europe or Japan or anywhere else to pay for what he needs to pay for. It's just not going to happen. The whole thing has to be shut down. And as I've said before, the White Hats are standing by with an offer to finance a jubilee in the United States. That means all debt, public and private, will be written off, and there will be a redistribution of assets. All the money that was stolen from the people through central bank fraud will be returned. It should be several $100,000 for every man, woman, and child in the United States. So it's good that this thing falls apart. It should have happened a long time ago, but that is what we're going to do now. And there is no other choice. We're going through a very tough transition, but at the end of the day, everyone will be freed from Babylonian debt slavery. That's what we're working on. Now, the other thing that people need to be aware of is that there is evidence now we really are dealing with a rogue artificial intelligence. If you look at the huge amounts of money being spent on AI, on these mega databases by companies like Oracle, NVIDIA, and ChatGPT, you'd think that there's a business plan behind that. But no, the data shows that 95% of companies are unable to make money from AI. In fact, it's now turning out that AI is actually causing productivity to fall because lazy employees use AI to make reports that look plausible, but because AI cannot check facts, it's not connected to reality, it ends up causing more work for coworkers. And right now, this AI thing has gone so far, and this internet stuff has gone so far that 70% of content produced on the internet now is created by AIs, and 60% of communications is bots talking to each other. This is not a good way to use our energy or our money, to have bots talking to each other, and it needs to be removed from the system. They need to unplug all this. I mean, I've been watching some documentaries, and the AI is really awful. Like I was watching a documentary on the Battle of Waterloo, and they had these AI images with cannons firing from the wrong end. Or, they had one on Kennedy where they featured this orange-haired young guy who wasn't Kennedy, because AI is unable to distinguish realities. What I'm trying to say is that the one thing that has been booming in the United States, the super high stock market valuations of most of these high-tech companies, is a hallucination. It's one of the biggest bubbles in history, and it is about to burst. The other thing is that France is very close to revolution. I think they lost their 5th prime minister in 2 years, and support for Emmanuel Macron is now at 14%, which is a record low for any French president. And Emmanuel Macron is a front for Jean-Michel de Rothschild. And my French intelligence sources tell me in the satanic hierarchy he is above Donald Trump or any of these other people. So if France falls and Macron is either arrested or flees the country. That will be the first domino, but when it falls, that will result in blackmailed pedophiles like Keir Starmer in the UK, Mark Carney in Canada, the Mertz in Germany. All these people will fall, and I'm believing that Trump is not going to last either. That's what I'm hearing. Now, again, like all of you, or most of you, I supported the Trump who was elected in January to clean up the deep state, and he was trying very hard to do that, but he has not been seen since June. So the Trump we're seeing now is a Chabad puppet, not the original Trump from the U.S. Space Force, the white hat Trump. I haven't seen him, but you can tell that the current Trump is compromised because he was there with Alec Bourla of Pfizer promising $70 billion U.S. tax money to make mRNA vaccines in the United States, even though it's been proven they've killed millions of people. Bourla should be facing war crimes charges, not, this is fascism. And right now they're trying to pass laws in Canada, the UK, Germany, the US, where if you write something they don't like on the internet, they can arrest you, they can cut you off. They're trying very hard to prevent us from realizing the truth, which is that we're ruled by Satan worshippers who use a system of Babylonian debt slavery. This system is now collapsing. So, I hear the White Hats are going to be holding a war council, and they're going to find concrete ways to move in Mar-a-Lago and arrest all the people there, and move into the Senate and arrest the people there. All the traitors need to be arrested. Now, the other thing is, the breaking news is that Trump did not get the Nobel Prize. It was a Venezuelan opposition leader. So that means that a decision has been made that, Trump cannot continue. He's not viable. So that's a very important thing that's happened. So definitely something big is in the pipeline, and I think the coming week is going to be historical. Let's see what happens, but there will be war councils. There will be a lot of stuff going on in the background. Right now, there are heavy-duty back-channel communications between the U.S. military, British intelligence, and the Russians. But the Chinese are out of the loop in this. This is going to be a Western solution to the Western problems, and then we can deal with China. But first, the West needs to remove its satanic infection, and that's what's going on. Okay, well, that's about what I have to say for myself this week. Now I'd like to answer questions from readers and viewers.
Hi, Ben. We have our first question for today. Does the Commonwealth exist? If so, who is in control of the Commonwealth, and how can you help us reform this?
The Commonwealth is still very strong, and it's built on a network of personal connections at high levels, and I'm hearing that there's going to be a serious reform in the British royal family, but the key to the Commonwealth becoming viable again is to make sure that India and other Commonwealth members are full participants, because when it existed in the past, it was a sort of a white man's club with white men at the top, and no one from India or somewhere else could rise to the top of the Commonwealth. That is now changing so that it will be possible to have someone from India or Belize or any other Commonwealth country run the organization. And they have historical links. They're linked by the English language. They have sports meetings and lots of personal communications. And it wasn't really an evil organization, although it had its flaws. And I think the Commonwealth will become increasingly important. And behind the scenes, the Commonwealth has been allied with China to do the Belt and Road Initiative and other peaceful things for the good of the planet. So I'm a great supporter of the Commonwealth, and I'm hoping it will be reformed so that it continues to stay as a major force for friendship and good relations between nations. Next question.
Hi, Ben. Trump is visiting Japan on October 27th. The objective may be stripping money from Japan as the U.S. is bankrupt. Nonetheless, Japan has no money to save U.S. bankruptcy, as the agriculture bank Nochu has lost a huge amount of money in the U.S. bond market, and I cannot imagine any significant amount of money is left in Japan. Inform us why Trump is coming to Japan, and if Trump's objective is money to avoid U.S. bankruptcy, where is this money in Japan?
Well, yeah, I mean, he is going to come to try to extort money. I don't know if he'll be around until then. I'm hoping not. But, you know, the thing with the Japan Agricultural Bank is a real crime. You see, the Norinchukin, the Japanese Agricultural Bank, is actually a real bank in the sense that it's 100% deposit base. It's all its money is actual deposits. And most U.S. banks, more than 90% of what they lend is not backed by deposits. It's just money they put on their books out of nothing. So what happened was they used pressure on Norinchukin probably to force them to hand over money, which is, you know, disguised as bond losses. And then Norinchukin, to recoup that, raised the price of rice drastically in Japan, which caused a popular revolt against the Japanese government. And you know, the government, I mean, when people's food is impacted, that's when the, you know, sleeping masses wake up, because that's something that they're not going to stand. So I guarantee you, even if he does come, he'll leave empty-handed, because Japan has nothing to hand over. The same is true of Europe. Germany's economy is 20% smaller than it was in 2018 because it's been forced to buy expensive oil and gas from the United States, and the Europeans do not have the 1.3 trillion to give the U.S. that they think. So I doubt he'll come, but if he does, he'll leave empty-handed, and hopefully, if he does show up, they'll arrest him for war crimes. Next question.
Hi, Ben. Can you clarify if the military brass attended that meeting that was called? You originally said in your Monday newsletter they wouldn't attend because it was possibly a trap. Real Raw News is stating that about 250 were requested to take polygraph tests to prove if they were loyal to Trump. I know RRN isn't 100% to be trusted, but it's an interesting take since you initially said it might be a trap. If they did decide to go, what was the actual purpose?
Well, I did talk to people about that, and the conclusion was that they made sure that everybody would be safe, but the speech that Trump made and then that Hegseth made was very badly received. But right now, a large part of the military is still following Trump because he's their nominal commander-in-chief, but a growing group is aware that the real Trump has been replaced by a fake and that their commander-in-chief is not there. But there is a group that is still trying to start or use a threat to start World War III in order to get more money to keep the U.S. government going, but I don't think it's going to work. So what will probably happen is when the military stop getting their paychecks, they'll finally wake up. But I do know there's been a split with the Five Eyes, and so that right now at the highest level of the intelligence community, they're no longer with Trump, and they're negotiating with Russia for Ukraine peace, and also Israel has basically lost the war in Gaza, and Egypt has moved in. So we'll see, but there is still a group in the military that probably has some sort of compromat held against them that is still behind Trump. That's the reality right now. Next question.
Hi, Ben. Wasn't 9/11 and Iraq thing all connected with Bush and Tony Blair? The same Tony Blair that hasn't gone away despite the links. Instead, he's made a, quote, sir, for what it's worth. Now they're handing him out Disney tickets, like Disney tickets these days. Instead of being somewhere else more deserving, Blair has allegedly snagged the being in charge of Gaza role. Have you heard anything about this?
What I heard is the reason Tony Blair was not executed for his pedophile crimes and other things is that he secretly provided a lot of testimony about the cabal and Epstein Island and all that kind of stuff. But there's no way on earth that he's going to make governor of Gaza. As I've mentioned earlier, the Egyptians are actually in there now. Israel's actually lost the war. The only thing we're seeing is fake news on our screens, but that's not the reality on the ground in Israel. And I'm sure that Israel is about to be replaced by the multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious state of Judea. And Blair will have no role in that. Next question.
Hi, Ben. We have our last question for today. Another earthquake has hit the Philippines. This is the second earthquake this month. Is this some form of super weapon, or is it natural?
I'd have to look into that, but as a general rule, if it's an artificial earthquake, you have to look at the seismograph because it has a telltale sign. It starts with a big bang and then boom, 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 like that. Whereas if it's natural, it goes boom, 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 boom. And the other thing is you have to look at where it was, because if the earthquake started around a military base, then you can tell it was some kind of weapons attack. I'll have to look into that, but you can do your own research by looking for the seismograph and seeing if there's a military base around the epicenter. Let's start with President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet choices. There's some good news. Matt Gaetz has withdrawn his nomination as Attorney General, and Pam Bondi, Florida Attorney General, is now the new candidate. And she, unlike Gaetz, is on the record as being against. So this is a sign that there will be a crackdown. Furthermore, Tom Homan, Trump's border czar, has said that a lot of the 300,000 or over 300,000 missing children who crossed the border into the U.S. Went to pedophiles, and that they're going to investigate that. So it looks like we have a real crackdown on these mass child sacrificers. It's now, in the public domain. And of course, they're freaking out big time. The Khazarian mafia are still desperately trying to start World War III, but the military is not listening to them. They tried this long, missile attack into Russia because Russia had previously warned that such an attack could lead to nuclear war. But instead, the Russians know very well that these people are trying to start World War III, and they're not going to let them do that. But they did retaliate with a weapon that's never been seen before, and it's a multi-warhead ICBM, but non-nuclear missile. And you can watch it at the clip right here. So what the Russians have done, as you can see, is demonstrate that they know who they're dealing with and that it's not the real governments of the United States and the West. They're dealing with a rogue faction that is about to be removed from power. And they are getting desperate. I mean, there's now shredding trucks outside the Justice Department. They're trying to shred documents to hide evidence. And they're doing other things. So I'm hearing that, if things get too bad, there will be some kind of military action inside the U.S. before January 20th. In other words, we don't want to leave these criminals on the loose and in power much longer. Now, the other thing that's going on, of course, is the International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and others, including Hamas members who, work with Netanyahu or Netanyahu. And this is a clear sign that there's some kind of crackdown that's going on, and that these people will face justice for their crimes in Gaza and in Ukraine. Vladimir Zelensky is also going down as a war criminal, but more important, we're going to see removal of governments in Canada and the UK and Australia, and probably New Zealand as well, as the regime change in the Five Eyes continues. Now, as far as Canada is concerned, it looks like Donald Trump is taking up the offer to become the first president of the United States of North America. And believe me, Canada does not have a functioning government right now. It is controlled by criminals who stole the election with the help of Alex Soros. And Alex Soros, by the way, is threatening to hit the people with saying they're playing with fire. No, Alex Soros, you're going to jail and probably going to face the death penalty. So you can see that the Speaker of the House, who's the homosexual lover of Cass Trudeau, according to the CIA, is cutting off the mic to prevent a member of Parliament from speaking. That's what happens in dictatorships, not in Canada. And it's to my great shame as a Canadian that the Canadian military and intelligence agencies were unable to prevent the takeover of that country by Nazis. But in any case, Trump is probably going to take over. We'll see some Space Force people have contacted me. These are people I've met before who demonstrated some very unusual off-world Tesla technology. They are now in a certain Asian country to do the due diligence to confirm that there is gold to back the Future Planning Agency. And also, this will help write off all U.S. and probably world debt. And we'll have a fresh start. There'll be a talk with Asian secret society representatives on Sunday to confirm this. And if the gold, if we can't prove the gold is there, then we'll have to start negotiations on a basket of commodities to back the financial system. But this is happening. And I try to avoid, woo-woo topics. I'm a here now guy in the real world operating on real news. But my Japanese military intelligence sources have told me that some very unusual anti-gravity craft have landed at the Yokota Air Base in Tokyo with members of the Secret Space Force. I will believe it 100% when I actually see it myself. I have asked for a chance to ride on an anti-gravity craft and then film it and share it with my audience. But until you see that or you ride one yourself, take all this with a grain of salt. But we are hearing from these sources, and it's becoming harder and harder to deny, that the quarantine on the planet Earth may be about to end and that we'll be allowed off-world. Again, I'll believe it when I see it. Right now, I can get on an airplane and fly to Canada, but I cannot get on a flying saucer and fly to Mars. So we'll see. But it's getting more realistic, and there's more and more different sources confirming this. So again, until you see it with your own eyes, don't believe it 100%. But clearly, what's happening now is a lot more than just a presidential election. I really do think that this is the beginning of a new age, and I am hoping that we're going to be very pleasantly surprised many, many ways over the coming months. Let's see what happens. But it's clear the White Hats have won, and it's a mopping up operation now. So, well, that's what I have to say for myself today. Now I'd like to answer questions from viewers and readers.
Evan, we have our first question for today. What are your thoughts on Trump's cabinet picks so far? How do you feel about him picking Dr. Oz to run Medicaid and Medicare services? To me, it seems a little comical, as Dr. Oz was involved in pushing back quack supplements that he claimed were miracles for weight loss.
I'm going to defer on that because I don't know enough about this guy, but the important thing is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's going to crack down on the systematic poisoning of the American people and Japanese and other people by the pharmaceutical industrial complex. So that's the one to watch. And as far as supplements are concerned, they're going to have scientific evidence to back their claims. Otherwise, they'll be cracked down on by the authorities, which is what they should have done in the first place. And now the other cabinet member I forgot to mention in my talk was the Commerce Secretary. I think it's Ludnick or something. He was the crypto guy that Elon Musk was pushing for Secretary of the Treasury. And the fact that he didn't get that job is further proof that they're going with the gold-backed system and not going to try to go into crypto. So that's an interesting pick. And also, it looks like it means they're going to try to come up with a deal with China that does not involve tariffs. It'll involve instead getting Chinese help to rebuild U.S. industry so that the United States does not have a chronic trade deficit with the rest of the world. Okay, next question.
Hi, Ben. Do you think the Biden administration will start World War III with Russia before Trump can get into office? I read recently that Ukraine struck Russia with U.S. missiles, not to mention that Putin said they would go nuclear if this occurred. How far do you think this will be taken?
My understanding, as I mentioned in my talk, is that the world's top military are not obeying the people behind the fake Biden administration, and they're not going to be fooled into starting World War III, which is the only get-out-of-jail card these Khazari mafia have now. By the way, another thing I forgot to mention is that there was some kind of mysterious heavy-duty airstrike on Palmyra in Syria, and that's where they had the Ark of Satan. And again, I try to avoid woo-woo stuff, but I'm hearing that some kind of portal was shut in that attack to prevent the Satanists from escaping. Again, I'll believe it when I see it, but that's what I'm hearing. Okay, next question.
Hi, Ben. It has been my understanding that Donald J. Trump supports Israel, but not the Zionists. The Zionists are the cabal's satanic regime controlling Israel, and Donald J. Trump will take down the Zionists to free the Israeli people from their evil tyranny. Am I wrong in thinking this?
I believe you're right. The Jewish people are going to be liberated after thousands of years of slavery under Babylonian Satanists, and Israel will be replaced by the nation-state of Judea that will include the native Judeans, misleadingly called Palestinians, with full citizenship rights. That's what I'm hearing. So yes, he's going to help liberate the Jews. Next question.
Hi, Ben. Russell J. Gold discovered that the U.S. bankruptcy was ending in 1999. Since then, USA corporations ceased to exist. He captured our flag and became CIC and Postmaster General. Since then, all these presidents have been selected and are illegitimate. He has developed a quantum financial system. Do you have any knowledge of him or what he's been doing? He says he has beaten because they were trying to get him to surrender, which tells me he is legitimate. Please enlighten us on this if you can. I was wondering if he is now working with Trump.
I don't know about this, but I do know that I actually know the person who developed the quantum financial system, and it's not him. And furthermore, the quantum financial system is already operating. People still mistakenly think that it's a SWIFT system that runs international finance. That is an old legacy system that uses Windows Vista, and it's used mainly by drug dealers now. And when I go to an ATM in Japan and withdraw money from a Canadian bank account, that is the quantum financial system. It's not run by him. It's right now going to be handed over, I hear, to the Future Planning Agency, depending the outcome of negotiations with the Asian secret societies. But I don't know more about this individual to make a meaningful comment. Other than that, I can confirm he did not start the quantum financial system, and he is not president of anything that I'm aware of. Next question.
Hi, Ben. We have our last question for today. You mentioned last week that we should stop paying rent and not paying bond payments. Does this mean that if I have a property that someone is renting, I will lose the property? What about us that have worked hard to own separate properties to collect rental income?
The proposal we have on the table is that when everybody is given ownership rights to their residence, their primary residence, that landlords, with the exception of, mega landlords like Vanguard and State Street, but, the average little old lady living off rent will be given the equivalent of rental income in government money so that they will not suffer any loss of income. That's the plan on the table, but it's all going to be worked out in public with a lot of input from the people before this is actually implemented. But we understand that legitimate landlords need to be compensated and will be. Okay, well, that's what I have to say for myself this week, and let's see if we can finally get some rides on flying saucers before too long, maybe by next week, but only believe it when you see it. Anyway, I hope to see the final financial collapse of the U.S. corporation, and right now they have 43 days worth of strategic petroleum reserve, and they might kick the can down the road a bit further. But in any case, there's nothing going to be happening, although on August 12th, 6 planets are going to align. There's going to be a peak of the Perseid shower, and there's going to be a solar eclipse in Spain as well as a new moon. So the cabal does plan events for such dates. So if something happens around then, we'll be on the case. But in the meantime, I've decided to take a look at my own personal experience in the dirty war in Argentina in 1978. My father was stationed as Canadian ambassador to Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay in 1978 at the peak of the dirty war. And I was there, I had a front row seat, and I think what happened then is relevant because the same people are trying to use the same playbook in the United States. Now, when I arrived in Argentina, we had 24-hour Argentine Special Forces guarding us at the embassy, the Canadian embassy. And I used to talk to the guard that they had assigned to us. And he showed me his notebook from the military academy. And it was like in grade 3 handwriting, but it was full of instructions on how to make bombs. And he explained to me that his bosses had ordered him to set bombs, him and his colleagues, to set bombs in different parts of the city so that they could blame it on left-wing terrorists and communists. And they proceeded to use this as an excuse to seize power, and they murdered at least 20,000 people, usually after torturing them for a long time. And this policeman, he told me about what their thinking was. He said, look, this is a perfect chance. We can get rid of all these antisocial elements, communists, known criminals. We can just drag them off the street and clean up society once and for all. This was the sort of thinking that was going on, and my father was at the heart of it. I didn't know this at the time, but he saved about 10 to 15,000 people from the Argentine death squads. They'd run into the Canadian embassy seeking shelter. He would provide them with Canadian documents, Canadian passports or other identification, and then they would be smuggled out of Argentina by the papal nuncio, the ambassador for the Pope. And this was because the government, when they have death squads, so for example, if you like some woman, but she's got her fiancé who's in the way, you phone up the police and you say that the fiancé is a communist, and he's gonna get the midnight knock, they're going to drag him out of his house, and they're going to torture him if he confesses to being a communist, and they're going to kill him. In the meantime, poor girlfriend's crying and saying, "Oh, what happened?" And I said, "Oh, I'll comfort you. I'll comfort you." And this was the sort of thing that was going on. And I had personal direct experience with this. Well, not direct, but what happened to me was a group of Argentine First Nations came to the embassy to visit a delegation of Canadian First Nations. And while I was there, a member of the Argentine First Nations invited me to visit the southern tip of Argentina, Patagonia and El Bolson, which I didn't know at the time, but was a major Nazi hangout. But in any case, I decided to go with him, and we were taking a 24-hour bus ride from Buenos Aires down south. And we're sitting in the bus talking about, Don Juan and shamanism and, I don't know, sort of hippie talk. And I think we mentioned marijuana. In any case, there was this lady sitting in front of us who kind of looked, disapprovingly at our conversation. And I didn't think much of it at the time, but, at one point during a rest stop, I saw her on the payphone for a long time. In any case, our bus was suddenly stopped, and a military colonel and two men with light machine guns came straight back to our seat. They put the machine gun right at my head and said, "You're getting out of the bus." And they took us out. And if I didn't have a Canadian passport with a mention that my father was Canadian ambassador, that would have been it. They would have taken us off and tortured us. But because I had this ID, they went through all our stuff, and they stole whatever they want. And I asked them, but they didn't find, of course, any drugs or weapons, because we're just hippies. We're not terrorists, But I asked the man, "Why did you, chase after our bus?" And she said, "Well, we got a phone call from a lady saying that there were terrorists transporting weapons and drugs down south." So this was this lady sitting in front of us who just decided to make an anonymous little phone call to turn us in. That sort of thing was going on all the time. And there was a lot of other nastiness. So for example, one thing they would do is they would surround a neighborhood, like a whole neighborhood, and then they would herd everybody into a certain central area, just at random. And then they would ask everyone there to show IDs, and they would grab people, just like that. And my brother saved several people by saying they're with him. But basically, this was a sort of regime they're carrying out. The problem is that they were extremely incompetent at managing the economy. And their propaganda, I mean, you go to movies here, they have these hypnotic sort of circles, and then they would have a propaganda thing. But it wasn't working when you had, hyperinflation and, things were falling apart. So they decided they needed to have a war. And at first they decided they were going to fight Chile because they thought, okay, this is someone that we can take on and beat, and then we can get all patriotic. And they were full of propaganda about how Chileans were evil and we had to declare war. And then the Pope intervened when they stopped doing that, and instead they invaded the Falkland Islands, thinking that since England was led by a woman, it would be a pushover. And of course, they lost that war. And then after that, public opinion completely stopped supporting them. They finally agreed to hand power over to a civilian government who promised not to press charges against these generals and by the way, my mother was at a cocktail party with these generals when she read a newspaper article about some leftists being arrested, and she said to this general, "What's going to happen to them?" And he says, torture has to be done in a rational, non-emotional way, manner. It has to be scientific. Otherwise you won't get the results you want. This is the sort of people we were dealing with. But and the other thing that was happening, of course, is that during that time, because they felt they were immune, this is the sort of people we were dealing with at the time. And this was also when the Bushes were still, they had their big ranch in Paraguay, which is the old ranch they'd taken over from Adolf Hitler. And next door to that ranch was the Unification Church ranch, which was run by, holdouts from the Japanese military intelligence from World War II. And they were smuggling drugs and, preparing for a Nazi comeback. And, again, I saw this firsthand, and it was just so nasty. I couldn't believe it was happening, but what really surprised me was after 9/11 in the United States, this same group of people, and let's face it, they're fascists, they're Nazis, and they want absolute totalitarianism. They use this 9/11 as an excuse to impose the Patriot Act on the United States, which is essentially a Nazi fascist act. And the key, again, you got to remember, it's like, terrorists don't have human rights, they say, or leftists and communists don't have human rights, but they don't actually define what a terrorist is, or a leftist, or a communist is. And that means they can take anyone they don't like, which is exactly what they were doing. But of course, it bounced back on them. Eventually, all the generals ended up in jail. Now, in the United States, what they're doing is they have this whole ICE business, where again, and if you look at what they did with the fake bombs in Argentina, well, they have a much more sophisticated version in the United States, where they stage these events designed to manipulate public opinion. And I'm pretty sure a lot of the really worst illegal immigrant murders were deliberately set to inflame public opinion. So they take some ugly black guy and have him do something horrible to a beautiful blonde woman, and then they put that all over the internet so that people say, oh my God, we got to do something about this, illegals. And again, they don't actually have to show ID, these ICE agents. A lot of them are IDF terrorists, and they grab illegals, but they also grab people who are on the list of undesirables. And it's getting quite intense. So for example, the amount of, news sites that I followed that were reporting the truth are being taken down one by one. Jim Stone Freelance is long gone. Now the Rumor World News is long gone, and John Rappaport has died. They're trying desperately to make sure that anybody with the wrong opinion is not allowed to speak in public. And this is, and again, going back to Argentina, they would, just for having the wrong books on their bookshelves. So these are the kind of people we're dealing with. They are fascists, and we're dealing with some very dangerous criminals who are cornered and desperate. But, they're going to fail for the same reason that the Argentine military failed. For one thing, the economy is in a shambles. The other thing is that they lost the war in Iran. And this is a big loss because they've used up all their missiles, their Patriot missiles, their other defensive missiles. And they say, oh, well, we're going to, it's going to take a couple of years to rebuild them. Well, they can't rebuild them because they require rare earth metals, and China has cut off their rare earth metals. The other thing that's happening is that people are no longer laundering money, oil money, through their banks. They are now going through Chinese or other banks that are not affiliated with the Khazarian mafia. But again, these are fascists, and they want to create a society where they have absolute control. They've shown this in Ukraine, where they've murdered millions of people, mostly men, enslaved a woman, sold their children off to slavery, as hard as we can. But, I've seen this before, but I know that we've beaten the fascists once. We're going to beat them again because they are wrong. So that's the sort of thing that personal experience I had that gave me warning what was going to happen to the United States, and it is happening now. And maybe if they had, managed to defeat the Iranian government, steal their oil, steal their gold, they could have kept things going. But right now, they don't have oil, they don't have gold. All they've got is this fake money printing machine, and all they can do is try to, launder that money through the stock market. But it's just not working. I mean, look at that SpaceX IPO. Elon Musk has never gone beyond the Van Allen radiation belt. He cannot get out of the atmosphere, and yet it's predicated on, colonizing Mars and space that he's getting all this money, supposedly. And then he can't even build a robot, and he's having trouble buying robots from China to make it look like his robot business is going to do well. His car business is flailing, and yet somehow he's supposed to be the richest man on earth. He is part of that P2, P3 Roman group that wants to create a world dictatorship, and they are failing. And as I keep repeating, the rest of the world is standing by, ready to help the West. They're going to forgive all their debts and all their loans, and they're going to then offer, virtually unlimited funding to rebuild infrastructure in the United States and Western Europe. We're just waiting for the final removal of this clan of Satan-worshipping fascists who were trying to turn this planet into a giant prison. And we still have a fight ahead of us, but I know from direct experience in Argentina that no matter how much you up the repression, it's not going to work, because you're going to run out of people to repress, and then you're going to start repressing members of your own group who will then turn against you. And that's exactly what's happening. So hang in there, folks. It shouldn't be much longer now. Okay, well, that's what I have to say for myself today, and hopefully there'll be more news to report next time.
Hi, Ben. We have our first question for today. In the video you were talking about last week, you said Scott Bessent now owes the Dragon family 200 tons of gold. I had thought the Dragon family had the gold to lend to the U.S. Treasury. How did that story change?
Well, they have gold, but more to the point was that during the 1930s and early into World War I, a lot of gold was lent to the United States from Asia, supposedly to finance, the fight against the Japanese militarism. And they were supposed to return that gold, and they didn't. They also issued countless U.S. government bonds backed by this gold. And what's happening now is that they're refusing to monetize or cash a bond that was given to the Dragon family based on gold that they took from the Dragon family. So the Dragon family is saying either you cash the bond or you give us back the 200 tons of gold that these bonds are backed by. And the Americans do not have the gold to give back. And they're refusing to use this money to help set up a new system that will be better than the one they have in place. So, the Dragon family still has lots of gold, but the point is they want the gold they already gave to be either paid for or given back. That's what's going on there.
Hi, Ben. Is Bessent's actual job to prop up these currencies by holding an interest rate gap between the Bank of Japan and the Fed in order to keep gold from skyrocketing?
No, what's happened was Japan was attacked again and threatened again to hand over more money to keep the whole U.S. show going. This whole idea of the United States bailing out Japan is a complete lie. It's just extortion, because the United States doesn't have any money to give to Japan. But those threats are going to hit them back. There's going to be retaliation. If they try to hit Japan with their big earthquake weapon, then you'll see something happen to either the caldera around Mount Etna or to the La Palma Island in the South Atlantic. Either way, the idea that they can use weather earthquake weapons to extort money from the rest of the world and Japan forever is not going to continue. Next question.
Hi, Ben. In regards to Washington State, what's actually happening there, and why did it seem like it's being targeted?
It's not just Washington State. Wherever they have a government that's not doing what they ask, or when some group, for example, maybe it's Boeing or Microsoft who are there, aren't doing what they're being told, then there's some sort of attack to try to force the issue. But I don't know the details of that case.
Hi, Ben. In regards to Washington, D.C. now, it seems to have been under constant renovation for years. Who's paying for it? If it's the deep state, they clearly aren't going anywhere. And if it's the good guys, why sink more money into this area that we're considering to be satanic?
What happens is, okay, the United States dollar is not a single monolith. Different groups make their own dollars. The Chinese have US dollars, the Japanese have US dollars, the Saudis and the Indonesians have US dollars. What's happening is that US dollars made by the United States since 2008, the Lehman shock, have not been accepted by the other major dollar holders. But they can use it inside the United States. They can use it to pump up the stock market. They can send checks to people's houses. And it's this money that they're able to use within the United States. And it's that printing press that keeps them in power. Next question.
I mean, we have our last question for today. In regards to Japan using US dollars, do you think that at any point in time, Japan will just say, our currency is too weak, we can't keep going on like this, our purchasing power is awful, and just adopt the US dollar to be used in Japan? Or do you see in the short to long-term future Japanese yen becoming strong again?
I'm not a currency speculator, but clearly the reason why the yen is weak is because the Bank of Japan, which is not owned by Japanese, it's owned by the Rothschilds, is being forced to print money out and hand it to these international banks who then use it to speculate elsewhere. So the yen is weak because money is being taken out of Japan. And the key, which I keep telling the Japanese they have to do, is to nationalize the Bank of Japan. And that's going to happen, I guarantee you. All right, well, once summer's over, I think a lot's going to start happening. So,
Restored Republic via GCR update. Judy note, we are 24 hours away from an event that will change the world forever. BRICS, NESARA, GESARA and Quantum Financial System, QFS, we're sending shockwaves through the deep state. With gold-backed currencies and secure Q phones, the old order is collapsing. Prepare for a revolution. Carolyn Bessette Kennedy on Telegram. On Wednesday, 12th of August, 2026, President Trump gave the green light, activated the Emergency Broadcast System, EBS, ordered the global military alliance to take over the mainstream fake news media and make mass arrests. Be prepared for worldwide emergency alerts, blackouts and 10 days of communication darkness. Why? The takeover of American liberties had been building since the end of the Civil War when foreign interests took over America's tax system. Although, the real takeover began in earnest in 2009 when President Obama was fraudulently elected into office. Obama immediately and quietly established a shadow globalist deep state cabal government of radicals to sabotage the American people and their constitution. The Obama Foundation and DNC network of criminals consisted of over 32,000 radicals, with 25,000 more in training. An Obama executive order turned 8,000 civilian generals into a stay-behind army and replaced 6,000 plus of them with Obama deep state loyalists. Radicals were embedded all over the country for the purpose of causing chaos. Supporting them were leading technology companies, the entire left-leaning mainstream media, left-leaning academia, and universities. All have been working with the Chinese Communist Party, to which now the Democratic Party, using Democratic Socialists of America members, pledge their allegiance to the CCP and the takeover of America. Interpol and the Global Military Alliance have executed simultaneous raids on Central Intelligence black site archives, recovering decades of hidden financial records, blackmail vaults and direct order logs, exposing the cabal's global financial manipulation. Deep within subterranean command nodes, military intelligence teams have successfully extracted the master cryptographic keys to global surveillance networks, permanently severing the communication lines of shadow directorates. Simultaneous tactical incursions target deep underwater fiber optic repeaters and orbital relay stations, cutting off the clandestine data loops utilized by international syndicates for market manipulation and coordinate sharing. Special operations teams have confiscated multi-billion-dollar offshore gold reserves and digital asset vaults tied to compromised sovereign wealth funds. Forensic accounting units secure multi-trillion-dollar corporate ledgers hidden inside sovereign tax havens, mapping out the exact capital flows that funded decades of covert geopolitical engineering. There have been mass detentions of senior international corporate directors and financial technocrats who were implicated in designing global supply chain bottlenecks and artificial scarcity networks that served the cabal. Compromised executive boards and corrupt political figures were being transferred directly to secure facilities including Gitmo. Over 100,000 military tribunal prosecutors and investigators have been deployed across secure jurisdictions to process millions of pages of recovered digital evidence and witness depositions. Evidence has been obtained in many ways. Emergency economic measures have been activated to freeze assets linked to the exposed shell corporations and offshore accounts. Central bank hubs across Switzerland, London and New York are under direct audit as authorities unend decades of illicit funding used to sustain global cabal operations. Over 200 major corporate entities, media conglomerates and pharmaceutical fronts were facing immediate asset freezes. Financial controllers and compliance officers are cooperating with military intelligence to map out the entire liquidity chain and recover hidden funds. The transition to a quantum financial system was accelerating, backed by asset-based manipulation. Old banking rails were being decommissioned to prevent capital flight by those named in the sealed indictments. Public disclosure broadcasts, EBS alerts, were scheduled to begin across major emergency alert system overrides. Documentary evidence, transaction ledgers and digital forensics will be released globally and simultaneously. This was the systemic dismantling of the old guard. The financial infrastructure that supported impunity was collapsing. There may come a moment when the signal becomes quiet. A moment when the old internet does not answer the way it used to. A moment when platforms slow down, messages fail, websites disappear, banking apps freeze, payment rails become unstable, and the public begins asking the same question at the same time. What is happening? This is the moment people must remember one thing clearly: do not panic. When the signal goes dark, fear will try to speak first. Confusion will move quickly. Screenshots will spread. Rumors will multiply. Fake accounts will appear. Scammers will pretend to have answers. Some will claim they can restore access. Some will ask for wallet information. Some will ask for passwords, seed phrases, private keys, documents, or payments. That is why discipline matters. The darkness of a signal does not mean the end. Sometimes it means the old network is being exposed. Sometimes it means weak systems are failing under pressure. Sometimes it means the final cracks are becoming visible before a stronger structure can rise. The people must understand the difference between collapse and transition. Collapse is uncontrolled. Transition is protected. Collapse leaves people lost. Transition requires patience, order, and calm while the old structure is cleared and the new road is prepared. We, the White Hats, are not here to create fear. We are here to prepare the people for the moment when confusion tries to take control. If the signal goes dark, remain calm. Protect your accounts. Protect your family. Keep your devices secure. Do not click unknown links. Do not trust random messages. Do not give access to anyone claiming to be support. Do not act from panic. The loudest voices during darkness are not always the safest voices. This is why preparation must come before the moment arrives. Save official links. Know where to look. Follow only trusted sources. Keep important information backed up. Keep your communication calm and direct. Help your family understand that panic is not protection. Fear is not wisdom. Confusion is not truth. The old internet was never built to carry the future that is coming. It was built on weak passwords, exposed identities, fragile platforms, centralized control, hidden tracking, data harvesting, and digital gates that can be closed without warning. A new era requires more. It requires quantum-safe protection, verified access, secure identity, cleaner communication, stronger financial rails, systems that protect the people instead of collecting, limiting, and manipulating them. That is why the signal may need to go dark before the new connection becomes visible. Not as punishment, not as defeat, but as the final proof that the old network could not protect what comes next. When that moment comes, many will not understand it at first. They will see silence and call it failure. They will see darkness and call it danger. They will see disruption and believe the road has ended. But those who are prepared will understand. The signal going dark is not always the end of communication. Sometimes it is the pause between two worlds, the old one losing power and the new one preparing to come online. If the signal goes dark, do not follow panic. Follow discipline. Protect your family. Protect your access. Protect your information. Protect your peace. Share it with your friends, your family, and every patriot who understands that the strongest people are not those who panic first, but those who stay calm when the world becomes quiet. The old signal may go dark. But darkness is not the final message. It is the silence before the new connection. Global currency reset. On Tuesday, August 11, 2026, reports from Australia said bondholders were being funded, while other sources said bondholders were promised liquidation of their funds by Thursday 12, August 13, 2026. Other sources claim that on Friday 14, August 15, 2026, Tier 4B, US, the Internet Group, would be notified to set redemption/exchange appointments. The Iraqi parliament was expected to release their new dinar rate by Saturday 14th of August. On Tuesday, September 1, 2026, the new gold-backed global financial system will be active and redemption centers will be open worldwide in 209 nations. Tuesday, August 11, 2026, Bruce, two sources in Canada were able to do exchanges today at one bank but at lower rates. Confirmed from banking source in Canada, exchanges were taking place in India, Indonesia, and Pakistan. A military source believes Tier 4B will get notifications for Thursday or Friday 14th of August, and exchange appointments would be made for free or Saturday 15th of August. What we think we know as of Thursday, August 13, 2026, Wednesday 12th of August. Base CEO drops a bombshell. Big banks are trying to block pro-crypto policies. They're working overtime to control the narrative and slow down adoption. This is a wake-up call for the crypto community. Wednesday 12th of August. 2026, follow the money. 11 corporations control 90% of consumer goods. The brands compete. The owners don't. A small number of investment giants hold major stakes across much of the corporate world. The more you look, the more the illusion of choice begins to fade. Wednesday 12th of August. 2026 U.S. debt clock. Breaking news, $40 trillion alarm. U.S. debt clock blows past the historic mark as America's debt train isn't stopping. U.S. debt clock projects America's national debt above $40.1 trillion as official Treasury figures close in on the historic $40 trillion mark. See the staggering debt per taxpayer numbers and why America's exploding debt is becoming an urgent issue for Trump, Congress and the American people. America's debt warning is becoming impossible to ignore. The U.S. debt clock is now projecting national debt above $40 trillion, with the live display at approximately $40.11 trillion. The U.S. debt clock states the figure is algorithmically projected from latest Treasury data. The live $40.11 trillion should not be confused with the latest official Treasury balance. As of August 10, 2026, the latest Treasury-based figure stood at approximately $39.92 trillion. America is extraordinarily close to a $40 trillion national debt, and the U.S. debt clock's real-time projection has already crossed that psychological line. Alongside the projected $40.11 trillion, the clock showed debt per person of approximately $119,735, debt per taxpayer of approximately $286,508, and interest per day of approximately $3.8 billion. These are U.S. debt clock calculations, not official balances. They illustrate the extraordinary scale of federal indebtedness. Washington continues to carry an enormous and growing debt burden. President Donald Trump inherited an enormous federal debt burden when he returned to the White House, but his administration and the current Congress now confront the fundamental responsibility: what will they do from this point forward? That is where an America First fiscal argument becomes genuinely